Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a lovely day. I'm your host, Apostate Aladdin, and today's live stream is going to be a little different than the previous ones. So, I've been live streaming for a while now, and usually I've been alternating between different live stream formats. For, I would have, I just heard my own voice. Sorry. Um, I would have live streams where I have believers call in specifically, and we would talk about why they believe. I would have other live streams where I ask ex-Muslims specifically to call in, and we talk about, what's going on in their life and issues related to, their journey out of Islam and things of that nature. And it sometimes it'll be a completely different format. And I decided that since it's difficult for people to anticipate what's coming next, and I don't always do a great job of scheduling them going forward, I'm just going to be doing this live stream on Wednesdays. This is a new experiment, so it may pick up, it may not. Let's see how it goes. And the format of it is kind of loose. We'll figure it out as we go, and I'm open to suggestions in the comments. Basically, I'll be taking calls. Perhaps some weeks I'll start by telling you about something or a topic that I'll suggest we talk about, or sometimes I'll just take callers as they come, and we'll see how it goes. Um, but whatever happens, I'll be posting the day before. So every Tuesday, check my channel. You'll find the for the next day. That's how it's going to be from now on. Just Wednesdays. So hopefully that simplifies things for people. And if you would like to join as a caller, I'll be joining the link. I'll be posting the link in the live chat 15 minutes before the scheduled time. So time that depends on the week, could be any time on a Wednesday. So I can accommodate as many people as possible from all over the world. But it's going to be every Wednesday going forward, hopefully. So yeah, and congratulations to all of us for hitting that 15,000 subscriber milestone. Now 16,000, I suppose. And yeah, I've got a special live stream next week about that in a way. So for those of you who are watching offline, not watching this live, I'll be leaving timestamps after the live stream is over. If you would like to listen to a specific caller or skip a certain caller, you'd be able to do that. And for those of you who are watching, if you would like to note any noteworthy timestamps or particular moments in a live stream that you think, stood out to you, please feel free to comment those, not in the live chat, but in the comments after the video is over. That way we can find them afterwards. Yeah, what else did I want to say? That's most of what I wanted to say. Also, the last video that I made, it seems to be a trend that every time I make a video that mentions someone in the da'wah scene, it does really well. And I don't like that because I don't want my channel to be about anti-da'wah, anti Islamic apologetics, drama stuff. So I would like to point your attention to the fact that I have many other videos that I think are more interesting than those ones. So for those of you who joined because they found those videos, welcome to the channel. But I urge you to watch other stuff as well, because that's the majority of my content. It's not about the Dawah guys. So yeah. And also, last thing before we get to the first caller, we've got a queue of them already. If you would like to join, leave a message in the private chat telling me who you are, what you'd like to talk about. That way I can kind of vet you and figure out if you fit in with the theme of the live stream, or if there's no theme, if you fit in with everything that we've been talking about so far. So please let me know in the private chat who you are and what you want to talk about. And lastly, I started a second channel a while back, and I haven't been posting to it very seriously, but I'm starting to do so now. You'll find it on my main channel. If you scroll down, it's called Aladdin Reads. And all I do on that channel is just read stories. Lately, I've been writing those stories with some help from AI. And the whole point of that is, for those of you who just want to listen to me talk or read something, that's an opportunity to do that. And I don't bring up religion. I don't bring up any decisive topics. It's supposed to be a place for you to relax. And it's an opportunity for some of my viewers who might be distressed by some of the content material or the topics that we discuss here to take a break and disconnect from all that on the other channel. So feel free to check it out. Anyhow, now with all that said, we do have 3 callers in the queue. please do let me know in the private chat what you would like to talk about before I add you on. And yes, that is my cat in the background. For those of you not familiar, that's Apu. He's always sleeping there, almost always. It's Apu the cat. Yeah. And lucky me, the flowers are blooming now and the plants are doing very well. So thanks for all the good vibes, guys. I think that's all because of you somehow. Okay, so we've got several callers. I'll take the first caller who did obey my command and tell me what they would like to talk about. The first caller is an ex-Muslim, and I hope they're ready. Their name is Angra. Angra, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Oh, hey, hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good for the most part.
For the most part, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, however much you're comfortable sharing, and what you want to talk about
Um,
today.
yeah, the main thing I can share is that I'm an ex-Muslim
Okay.
and I live in a place where I can't make that public, of course.
Okay.
So that's why I'm not going to show myself or anything.
That's all right. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what brought you here today, and what would you like to talk about?
Well, the last, I don't know if it was the last one or I think it was the one before the last one, the Muslim call-in live stream. There was one particular caller that mentioned that the reason why he believes so strongly in Islam is because he is terrified of the thought of death, right? Like it's the idea of the afterlife that makes him want to keep believing.
Mhm.
And I resonated with that a lot. And I felt like the chat back then didn't really understand the issue because they would say things like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if you die in the end because, like, as long as you lived a great life. And like a lot of like things that people say to explain why, you know, there not being an afterlife is okay. It's not the worst thing ever. But I feel like there's a condition. It's called thanatophobia. It's somewhat of like an irrational fear of death. And
I mean, I, I
uh,
I could say that the fear of death is pretty rational, right?
yeah, I know, but I'm talking about like to an irrational degree, like to the point
Mhm.
where it's something you can't stop thinking about. It's always in the back of your mind. And I do believe that I suffer from that. So what I want to explain is why that line of thinking, the idea that like just live your life as much as you can, as like to the fullest, doesn't really quite work for me. Um, and I'm not saying that I like believe in some sort of afterlife because of that, but I want to explain why it's painful. Uh, and so, like, for me at least, when people say, well, you know, just live your life to the fullest, it's like, but what's the point? Because once I'm dead, I'm not going to remember whether I had a good life or a terrible life. Like, whether you suffered or you had a good time, eventually it will disappear and you won't even be able to remember uh,
Well,
whether it was.
can I ask you something about
Yeah.
that? Um, why is the metric for you whether it's something to remember or to be preserved for infinity, not that it's happening or being perceived by you?
Because I have a difficult time like appreciating that which is finite, that which, like, when something happens and okay, I had a great experience, but once it's gone, it's like I can't really connect with it anymore, and the only thing that remains is the memory, which,
If you're not there to have memories,
yeah,
then I mean, do you remember the time before you were born?
no, of course not. Like
Do you
there's nothing
mourn
there.
like all that time that passed without you existing?
No, but that's the thing. Like I would rather be able to experience emotions, even if it's like negative, than like not existing at all. Like to me, that thought itself is so terrifying.
Yeah, but let me reiterate my question. Um, Before you existed, right? You missed out on so many opportunities to feel things, good or bad. Do
Yeah,
you mourn that time? Do you feel like you missed out on all the billions of years before your existence?
yeah, I would say so.
Do you fear it, or feel that loss as much as you feel the loss of after you die?
No, not to that extent.
So what's the difference?
Well, the difference is that now there is an end to a current ongoing experience.
But I mean, if you think about, I mean, we're thinking about time as a linear thing, and even if we assume that time is linear, um, what happens after you die, or you ceasing to exist, time passing without you existing to perceive or remember your existence, it's the same as time that has passed before you were, existed.
Yeah, yeah,
But I guess it feels more personal or more attached to you because you already exist. So it feels
yeah,
like there should be a continuation of it.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but obviously emotions aren't about rationality, but
Yeah, exactly.
rationally you would think that the time before you existed is as much of a loss as the time that's going to pass after you existed, if you think of it as a loss. um but again, I'm struggling to think of it the way that you think of it. um why do you feel like why is this life not enough?
Because it's too short, honestly. Like time just passes by so fast, and like once that time has passed, it's almost like it never happened at all, you know? Like I don't know if you've ever experienced this or realized this, but um, like I once had a long time away from university, like around 8 months, and I had almost no, like it was during the COVID quarantine, so I also had no real like human connection there. And even though those 8 months, they were such a long amount of time for me while I was experiencing them. By the time they were over, it's almost like they never happened at all. And so when I think about my life, it's like, well, even if I live for another like 50, 60 years, by that point, like it will have almost been like it was an instant, right?
So what?
It's too short.
But
And
isn't it greedy to want infinity?
I know, yeah, it is greedy, but like, how can I help it?
um and I'm not calling you a greedy person. Let's just make that clear. But maybe pointing out how that greed element is ruining the experience of the current time for you.
Yeah, it is. It is, honestly.
I wonder how you can. It's not easy to change your perspective on something like that. Like I see it differently than you, but I'm not sure how I can communicate that into your head so that you see it that way.
Yeah, if only it was that easy, right?
Yeah.
I think there was like a metaphor you used with that caller. You said something about how like um, a movie or a story is great because it ends, right?
I may have said that. But
You said
yeah,
you said
I
something
forget
like
things. But yeah, I
yeah,
may have said that.
and I like that analogy, but like the way I think of it is, well, if it's a great story and it ends, but you're able to appreciate it as an observer because you can still remember it. But the same doesn't really apply to my life because once it ends, I won't be able to remember any of it.
Well, let's explore this avenue. So just like a story that I am able to appreciate after it ends because I'm the observer, What if your life is a story that someone else can appreciate after it ends because they're the observer?
Yeah, of course, I'm aware of that, but it doesn't really help make me feel better. Like I can like sort of sometimes trick myself into to thinking that way, and being and the whole idea of like leaving a legacy, and like it's why I want to become an author and write a story to sort of like leave something behind. But it's I'm too self-aware. Like I can recognize that I'm just trying to make myself feel better. So it doesn't really solve the issue for me.
Do you think that you would have had this fear or this, again, I don't use this term in a criticizing or derogatory way, but this greed, more life, if it wasn't for that idea being introduced to you by religion?
That's a really good question, and honestly, I question that because yeah, like I feel like if I wasn't made to expect something like the afterlife ever since I was a kid, only to have that be taken away from me, I wouldn't have such an issue.
It's a very different point of view, someone who grew up being told, yeah, everybody dies and then that's it, to someone who really grew up to expect something like this. I feel your pain there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I was like putting all my hopes into that one thing, into that one idea.
It was your retirement plan,
Yeah,
but for, infinity. Um, it's like having a dream that you won the lottery in a sense, and then you
yeah.
wake up from it, right?
Like I would rather not have had the idea in the first place.
Right. But what do you think of the and this is not really about you per se, but what do you think of people who say, I still like spreading that idea of the afterlife and heaven and all that stuff because a lot of people are still in that fantasy and it helps them, even though it obviously isn't helping you.
Mm, it's a difficult question. I feel like maybe if you like don't place any conditions into it, it could be helpful to people. The problem with heaven and hell is that it's a conditional thing, right? Like you have to live a certain way in order to go to heaven.
Hmm.
And that's what makes it really toxic. But the idea itself of just believing that there is something after death, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, that's probably the reason why religion came to be in the first place, because people had to cope with death in some way.
I don't know if I fully agree with it that it's just the conditions that make it um, that make it possibly harmful. I think that there's a possibility that if everyone, for example, believes that there's heaven and you just go to it if you're a good person, or maybe no condition whatsoever, maybe some people are going to be complacent and bank on that possibility and neglect their one chance at life.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. It's also like a problem with how like people will be like, well, there's no need to solve issues in our
Hmm.
current society because like there's an afterlife.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a good point.
I wish I had a concrete answer for you to tell you this is how you get over your. It's not even a fear if I'm hearing it correctly, right? You're not afraid of the end of life. You're afraid of. You just don't want to miss out on not being alive.
I'm afraid of the state of nothingness, if that makes sense.
Well, if it's
Like
any
the
reassurance,
the idea of just not being, not being itself.
hmm
That's what terrifies me.
but if it's any reassurance, you're not going to feel fear in that state.
Well, yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I should say this, but the most I wish that you don't have that fear, that feeling anymore, and I wish that when your time does come, um, that you don't realize that you're about to die, because then you won't
Yeah,
even have
that's
that
that's
moment.
that's always been one of my greatest wonder, like things I wonder about is that like would I rather not know that I'm going to die and just have it happen like without me realizing, or would I rather have, time to prepare myself mentally? I still can't decide, honestly.
I think that you shouldn't presume that in the future you're going to still have that same fear. And I think that if you can afford to somehow speak to someone, because I'm not qualified to, to actually tell you what a solution for this kind of thing is. But if you're able to speak to someone who's more experienced with that kind of thing, I hope that you do. Or it may just be internal. Like you said, you want to write, maybe
Yeah,
you will figure it out through your writing. It's just not as hopeless as you might think sometimes.
I really hope so. I mean, I've read on the internet that like people who suffer from this condition, it's usually most intense in your early 20s, which I'm in my early 20s. So I'm hoping
Mhm.
that it like, gradually goes down.
I hope so too. How
But yeah,
long ago did you leave religion, by the way?
I think this is my second year. I would say so. It's like I was questioning it in 2021, and then 2022 I was like, okay, no. And so yeah, this is like my second or third years.
Okay. And has it been getting this fear? Has it been getting better or worse?
Um, I would say like it's slightly better. When I first started having it, I could not even fall asleep. Like I had to take pills to fall asleep because the idea of just maybe going to sleep and not even waking up was so terrifying.
Well, that's a good sign that things are headed in the right direction. But like I said, I hope you take a proactive approach to it if you can. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly, like, I'm not expecting any solutions to come that easy. I just wanted to explain or express how I feel.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. And I don't know if you noticed, I don't expect you to be reading the comments while we're talking. I prefer if you don't because it might be distracting. But there's a lot of people who say they relate to that. Some of them still believers, some of them not. So it's good for them and for you to know that it's not a unique case and that people do have solutions and people have gotten out of that state before.
Yeah, I'm glad that there are people who can relate. I mean, that's my future audience,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. Um,
But yeah, it was a great call, and I hope we can talk again about other things.
I hope so too. And yeah, I'm glad you called today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and a restful sleep without the need for any help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, take care. All right. Thank you again to the caller. So, a couple of things I want to say. So, for those who are joining the queue to call now, just letting you know, please let me know in the private chat who you are, what you'd like to talk about, so I can add you to the queue. I'll read some comments and then I'll get to the next caller in queue because we already have a bunch of them. So, there's someone who says, I'm an ex Salafist, Indian guy in the West, something like that. But that's not what I'm trying to highlight here. I love the responses. Rasul says, Apostate Aladdin is an alien pretending to be an ex Muslim. It's time to go back to Mars. Secular Spirit says, he wears a mask because he's actually a lizard person from Pluto. Guys, you have to agree on the lore. Like, this is not consistent. Yeah, I expect better. And Muhammad, I love this comment. 40 likes, 100 in attendance. What's up? Yeah, people, I'm counting on you to actually like the live stream, so that would help my channel grow. But anyway, thank you for that reminder, Muhammad. Okay, and we've got a few callers in the queue. The next caller is Critical Thinker, and then I've got. All right, let me set up the queue in the background. Critical Thinker, I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Aladdin, thank you.
Hi, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, okay. So, my background, like previously, I was born in a Hindu family. Means I'm born in a Hindu family, and
One
I
second.
was like,
Can
Yeah.
you get a little bit further away from the mic?
Okay, sure. Is it better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. So I'm born in a Hindu family. At one point of time, I had turned into atheist, and I also had come to like something belief similar to present day, like Islam, something like one God and these kind of things. So later on, I further investigated things, and now, like my currently, I am having very strong beliefs in like reincarnation, and I also believe in one merciful God. Based like yeah, and I have like the reasons like I have done quite a lot of deep investigation for coming to this particular conclusion what I'm holding now.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, monotheism, you believe in monotheism and reincarnation.
Yes, I believe in monotheism and reincarnation, and yeah, and but reincarnation is a bit complex than commonly understood. Uh, yeah, the thing like when someone says reincarnation, there's some assumption behind it. Like people think reincarnation simply means a human after the death they are going to get a body of another human being. But here, when I am speaking about reincarnation, it's not that simple. It can be human can go into reincarnation means okay. Do you have anything more to say? So I can, in next second, just discuss detailed.
Can you clarify what you like, what your understanding of reincarnation is, and also why you believe that it is what happens?
Okay, sure. So I met one of professor from IIT Kanpur. Like IIT is one of very reputed Institute of India. You see all of the major CEOs or anything like so of Google, Microsoft, or all the reputed. They come from this IIT institute. And this professor, he had done his studies in artificial intelligence and a lot of like, and he was also he had done his own investigation in the subject of consciousness because he was in the line of artificial intelligence. He has got a lot of patents. Uh, if you want, I can name his name also. It says no
No,
issue.
that's okay. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
want to focus too much on his
Yeah.
credentials.
So
Yeah, I'm more
so
interested in the idea.
so when I came in contact with this professor, and since I was atheist and I had like a kind of debate with him, so with step by step, like he explained to me, and I'll just explain you some things. Like first of all, the thing is he spoke like we have this physical body, and then in this physical body we have got some subtle things like mind. There's still more subtle thing, intelligence. Then there is consciousness. So the physical body, then there is subtle things which is mind, intelligence, and consciousness. And so this consciousness is that like in Bhagavad Gita 2.17 it says that which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible and no one can destroy that. If you see what is pervading throughout the body, for example, if uh, if anybody they have we in the in modern medical we have got a lot of like a lot of advances. We can even replace someone's kidneys. We can replace people's lungs. We can replace a lot of things, but we cannot replace the individual, the consciousness that makes the person. So that made a lot of sense to me. And this was not the only reason. Apart from this, there are many other reasons.
Wait, I
Uh,
have to pause you for a second. So,
sure.
just to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So, you had these debates, you were an atheist, and you had these debates with this professor who said these ideas, but you're also quoting Hindu scripture. Um, do you believe that the Hindu scripture is some kind of universal truth? Is that part of why you believe in reincarnation?
Okay, so Hindu scriptures are like a kind of library, and a big and because just like in Islam, like Abrahamic, you have got Judaism, you have got Christianity, Islam. There are different beliefs of each sect. So similarly, when you think of Hinduism, you might think like I might hold belief of something related to. Also, I do not have that kind of belief. I have certain beliefs which other mainstream Hindus might not agree with me, but I do believe in common book called Bhagavad Gita. This is something common which I think most of people do
I mean,
agree.
the book exists, but I mean, what do you believe about that book? Do you believe that it is inspired by some god, or that it holds some universal truth, or what does the book mean?
Okay, this book, like it's spoken by Krishna, Lord Krishna, and so far as per like the book itself, like it says, like Krishna is not a human being; he's the supreme personality of Godhead who had descended, who took avatar. It's not a birth like we take, for a birth we take, like it's called janma. But when God he comes to earth, he descends. It's called as avatar, as per
But
Bhagavad Gita.
you're also a monotheist, right?
Yes,
But you simultaneously believe in that.
yes, as per Bhagavad Gita, like God is one. Like it's not like, for example, there is when Krishna, he's the God, and Shiva is simply his expansion for the mode of destruction. Like same person, he takes another role for some particular task. So it's like it's not a different. It's just one God. It's not like there are multiple gods. As it's and I learned like although like we see some hierarchy, like there is Ganesh, there is Durga, so many things, like these are not God as per like scriptures. If we go into details, these are actually like the Ganesh whom Hindus worship. These are like actually
Okay.
uh, yeah,
Um, yeah. So
you
I'm
can say
trying to
kind of
understand.
angels.
I'm trying to understand why you believe in reincarnation. And you were telling me that. So part of what you were saying is that we can replace human body parts, but we can't replace the soul. And but also that there's this, a line in the scripture that says something about reincarnation. I'm trying to
Yes,
gather all the reasons that you believe in reincarnation. Um,
sure,
so I,
sure.
what is something that you can tell me? So building on that, what makes you believe that reincarnation, like let's say I agree with you that we can replace organs and the person is still the same person. I don't know if that means that there is a soul that's separate. I think if you replace a brain, a person will not be the same, which we can't do that yet. So I'm inclined to believe that the person's personality is mostly in the brain. Um, but what makes you believe that not only is that there's a soul, because we can replace body parts and the personality is the same, but also that it goes into other human beings?
Okay, so there are first of all, when I talk of scriptures, I talk of science. I'll just speak about both. First, I'll talk with regards to Bhagavad Gita, and there are other Vedic scriptures as well which talks about reincarnation. Then I'll come to science, what something. So first, Bhagavad Gita about reincarnation. There's an analogy given. There are actually multiple analogies given, and one particular analogy says, it's in Sanskrit, I'll just translate it. It says, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the point of death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So, just like I can ask you, what's your age?
I'm in my 20s.
20s. Okay, so as
Mm.
per Bhagavad Gita, as the embodied soul continuously passes, so now you're in your 20s. 20 years before, if you go, you were an embryo within the womb of your mother. Like 21 years ago, you were just an embryo. You had consciousness because, as per Kainek, like there is some consciousness even in womb, even in embryo.
Well,
So it says,
I have to
yeah,
be honest with you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I I I get really tired and bored almost of hearing about assertions based on scripture. So for me to understand, or to also adopt that kind of belief, or to understand where you're coming from, I would have to believe that the scripture that you're quoting is actually true. Like that's what we're starting. So
yes,
then
that's
I would
good.
have to ask you, like, what makes your scripture true?
Okay. Actually, the thing is, I found previously, like I had some lot of bad habits. Like I was addicted to like pornography and all this kind of things. But the scripture says like we how to control our senses. controlling our mind. There are some techniques, and it worked. And there are other things like
Wait,
daily.
well, we have to take it one step at a time. So if the
Sure.
scripture makes you better at self-control or fixes your life somehow, that
Yes.
doesn't really mean that it's a true text about the reality of life and souls and all that is to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a good point. But the thing is, like it says that there are steps. Like you are going to process one step, you're going to get further realizations. It's not just about theoretical thing. You do get some other realizations beyond this. For example, you might have some bad things like lust, greed, anger,
No, I
envy.
like, let's say I
Yeah.
agree with you for the sake of the discussion that if you follow that scripture, it might fix your life. Let's say that is true. It still doesn't really speak to the scripture being right about souls. Like if I make a self-help book, about how to be in touch with your inner self and how to improve your life, and then I make a claim about, sorry, that is very loud. I have to mute you for a second. So if I make a book about how to improve your life, how to stop gambling, how to be in touch with your inner soul or whatever, with a spiritual twist, and then after that I say in that same book, also these are 10 investment tips. That has nothing to do with that. Like even if all my tips were good for how to improve your life, it has nothing to do with monetary investment. So everything that you're telling me about how it improves your life, if that applies to you, how does that speak to the truthfulness of it, what it's saying about souls and reincarnation? You are muted at the moment. Yeah. You are still muted at the moment.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no worries.
Like as I told you, there's something theoretical and there is some practical aspect and there is one realization. The realization, for example, if you read some theoretical book, how to control your senses, it doesn't work out for a very long time. Since I've already tried some things, means I've before like understanding this philosophy, this thing, this practices, I did try some other things like uh, means I had taken classes from some motivator speakers, some motivational speakers, and these kind of things. But it did not work the way like it was like just get engaged in certain things for sometimes it works but it doesn't you are not free from it like you are trying for example just my addiction to
I think I get what you mean, but okay, so other help material and lessons didn't work, but this one did. So
yeah, this is the
what is
one
that?
thing.
But what does that
Yeah,
say about reincarnation? Like,
okay,
how does
this
that
is
make reincarnation true?
okay. Well, reincarnation, like as I told you, the analogies was which were explaining this, and there are even some scientific researches like there are people like some researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson. He has done a lot of researches of people from across the continent, from across different faiths. Even there are like atheist Chinese children who claimed
Wait,
like
I have to pause you there because
yeah,
that is usually an appeal to either authority or populism, saying that so many smart people with big qualifications also agree. Unless their qualifications or their intelligence or whatever applies to why they're right, or explains why they're right, it's kind of irrelevant. So what do all those people think that, how, tell me what they think. How does it make reincarnation true?
the thing is like if you to know anything, if you study something, you read deeper into if there are any loopholes in the explanations provided by them. Are there any alternative explanations? Are there is this some fake thing? Is this because there are possibilities of faking things? There are possibilities of people do cheat and all these things. And there are some very strong cases like you cannot if you just read some of his like if you read his book, some of cases so anything to learn, like if this is the way I think, like we can understand things, and it's not about authority. There can be any person, like even if he's, although Dr. Ian Stevenson is from particular, he's having psychologist degree. It can be any random person if he has sincerely done some research about something. So there is something, if you just make a thorough study, you do investigation, then there is something like you do get some faith in it, or you do find like it makes sense.
Okay, so you've been very nice to talk to. We have to end the call at some point soon. So the last thing I want to ask is, again, I want to make this point very clear. If the scripture that you believe in improves your life somehow, or it speaks to something spiritual in you, or following it, a lot of people have made their lives better, I don't see how it connects to, therefore, it must be right about something unrelated, which is reincarnation. Even if it makes analogies about how someone's soul changes from childhood to adulthood and all that, even if those analogies make sense, it still doesn't speak to the truthfulness of reincarnation. So is there something that you can say to explain how all of that ties into the truthfulness of reincarnation?
I would say if you just begin with skepticism, if you just begin with skepticism, then initially, like, you also need to see skepticism with skepticism. I mean to say, like, it's good. Like, skepticism is a very good symbol. Like, since I have myself named myself critical thinker, it's a very good, like, to without critical thinking, you can never reach out to any rational conclusion. But the thing is, with just merely by skepticism, you can never reach out to any conclusion as well. This is something like uh, excessive skepticism. There is a thing like excessive skepticism, but selective skepticism. Not too much skepticism, but not enough skepticism. Like, these are different things. Uh, it does not
I
bring
don't
to
think we
any
can.
logical.
I don't think we can
Yeah.
blame this one on having too much skepticism. It's it's not about being like, I don't think you can be skeptical about something too excessively, and if it's clear why it makes sense, or if there's clear evidence for it, then all the skepticism in the world is not going to cancel that out. But I feel like the skepticism is only kicking in when it comes to making that link. So is there something? I'm not asking you how I can arrive at there by reducing my skepticism, using the same amount of thinking and questioning. Is there a way that I can believe in reincarnation because the scripture made my life better? Is there a better way than that?
That's the overall thing. But with skepticism, I was making a point like when you're attached to one kind of belief is the all in all, and you ignore, like, suppose you believe just in the materialism, you believe only in materialism, and you deny there can be any possibility of anything beyond materialism. That was my point about skepticism. So you should be open that there can be something alternate explanations as well. That was my
I
point
mean,
about skepticism.
I am open to that. It's just that I still don't see how, like, say I am open to that. I'm not saying it absolutely doesn't exist, but that still doesn't help me arrive at the conclusion that it does exist.
Okay. So at last, like, I would say, that's called something sadhana. Sadhana is something like when you inculcate spiritual practice into your life, then the thing is your consciousness transforms. And so when your consciousness, then you experience something that it is not something, just for example, there's a sweet in India called gulab jamun. I'm not sure if you've ever tasted it. Have you ever tasted something like any sweet called gulab jamun?
I might have actually. That sounds familiar.
Okay. So if you have to explain someone about gulab jamun, you might say like it's a something round. It has got a huge thick viscosity. It is brown in color. It won't give the actual understanding to that person. So the thing is, until then, when there is when you do the sadhana, then you get these experiences within yourself, and it is no more something you have to like kind of like there's no more skepticism remain because you're experiencing something. So it's not about any more about any something doubt. You're experiencing like when I there is
Have
some
you experienced reincarnation?
I've not about reincarnation, but something like beyond. Like I have done experiences something about deep relationships with like with Krishna, with God, like something that is something I have experienced, and it's not like something which is so simple to explain or something. And about reincarnation, I can say I haven't experienced anything like it's not something to explain. We are just going on with this verse which I told you. Like I have changed my bodies from boyhood. I've grown to young. I'm going to grow old, but still the consciousness is going to remain same. So that is a constant experience which I'm undergoing.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing what you believe with us, and yeah, I enjoyed talking to you, and I hope you did as well.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Aladdin.
Take care.
I
Have a
enjoyed
good
your
one.
previous videos. Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm glad you do. Right. Bye-bye. All right. Thanks to the caller. We've still got a bunch of callers, and today we've got more than usual. So, just to explain to those who are not familiar, this new format, I'm just taking all sorts of callers. I might pause in the middle to read some comments and all that kind of stuff, but it's more improvisational. We'll taking each caller as we go. Maybe I'll be selective about the topics and the callers, but as of right now, I'm taking pretty much all of them. Might not be able to take everybody today, but I'm doing my best. If you're in queue, hopefully I'll get to you eventually. And yeah, what else did I want to say? I'll read a couple of comments and then I'll get to the next caller. So, and you, if you just joined and you would like to join the call and you click the link in the live chat, please let me know in the private chat who you are and what you'd like to talk about. Otherwise, you're not in queue yet. Okay, so read a couple of comments that I have bookmarked. Homo sapien says, I know you asked Muhammad Hijab, to come and join your live stream. You could actually teach him a thing or two about what ex-Muslims actually think. He wouldn't have the humility to listen, to be honest. So in my previous video, I opened that invitation to him, extended that invitation to him, and it's still extended because I feel like he's missing out on so much, and so is his audience, and so is my audience, missing out on so much good conversation if he manages to hold a conversation with someone like myself. And I don't say that as a flex. I mean someone who's willing to listen to him and deal with all his, shouting and attempts at derailing the conversation. I'm open to do that. I think it could be productive if he can manage to keep it on track, and the invitation is still extended because I think it might be, a lot of people say it's not worth it, and that might be true. But I think that it's time that we show his audience that we're not the caricature that he's painting of us. Like on this channel, you don't see me making videos being like, those cowardly Muslims are so and so, and those people suck and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that. I bring the believers here and I have a conversation with them. I might disagree with them. Some of them even tell me, yeah, I think you should be executed. I'm like, well, I'm desensitized to that. But on the other side, they make videos vilifying us. They put all these words in our mouths. They put on caricatures of us, not actual drawings, but just these. The word is escaping my mind, but just misrepresentations of us. They don't actually have a conversation with us. So I would be more than open to something like that. I think that would be very good. And all right. Yeah, I think I get to the next caller now. So the next caller is, let's see, we spoke before. I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hello, how's it going? It's me.
Good, how are you? Yeah,
Back.
it's you.
Awesome.
So
okay.
tell us what you'd like to talk about today.
Okay, yeah. I guess I'm not as mentally prepared last time for the entry. All right. So, yeah, I would like to basically so I think like when we talked last time, we were talking about Islamophobia, and I think like there's a couple of things that I may have not like properly communicated, and I saw this in like how people responded. So I wanted to clarify a few things more than anything else, really. But first, I wanted to hear what you have to think, because last time I remember when I first mentioned that I want to talk about Islamophobia, you said, I'm not sure what I think of that term. So I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about that first.
I think that term is very bad because it harms everyone. So whenever any criticism about Islam is labeled Islamophobia, which is the same word that is used to, say someone comes out here and says Muslims are so and so, they should go back to their own country, and they're blah blah blah, and 9/11 and all that kind of stuff, and someone who might even direct all that kind of stuff at someone who looks like what they imagine a Muslim would be. That people use the label Islamophobia to describe that person and to describe someone like myself, or someone who just says, I think Islam is kind of shit. Like, say someone says that. Someone says, I don't like Islam. I think that religion sucks. I don't like Christianity. I think that religion sucks. Both those people would be labeled Islamophobic. And those are not the same thing whatsoever. So the problem with that is two-sided. First of all, you're silencing all, like, not you, but someone who says that is silencing all the people who have valid concerns and criticisms, and even if they're not valid, they have an opinion about a religion, which, people are allowed to have opinions about religions. And at the same time, you're making it to some extent reasonable if you're lumping all Islamophobes together, and some Islamophobes are, me, and some Islamophobes are, very bigoted people. You're basically introducing an audience to the idea that the bigot and I might both be kind of right. So that's my issue with the label Islamophobia. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm mostly like active in political circles, so that's usually when we talk about Islamophobia, it's usually the former of what you described. Like when I think of Islamophobia, I think about what's happening to the Uyghurs. I think of what's happening in Burma, what's happening in Central Africa, what's happening at the Romanian border, by Frontex in the Mediterranean, etc. Right? So I'm thinking about these things, and yes, I'm also thinking about the people that are like, the thing that promote this idea that Muslims are out there to get us, that they are going to promote terrorism, that they're conservative individuals, etc. I think like criticizing Islam, no, is not Islamophobia, at least the way I'm using the word. I was thinking more like generalizations, spreading misinformation about Muslims, fear mongering, having bigoted attitudes, that kind of things. And yeah, I think you do raise an interesting point that it can be used to dismiss people that criticize the religion. I think, however, at least in political circles, that person would be laughed at and dismissed as, it's.
But they're not. Like,
again,
we're actually seeing it.
maybe,
We're seeing a lot of people side with
I know.
anyone who says Islamophobia.
Yeah, I know that it might be different in apologetic circle. So maybe there's like
no, even in like not
here.
religious circles and not political circles, we're talking about public discourse. Like, say in the news, if it's just easy to scream Islamophobia and that person will be shut down. I think it's a bigger issue than just, maybe you're talking to people who are very aware and they are involved in a lot of, I don't know, highly intellectual political discussion, perhaps. But for the general public, I feel like the word Islamophobia just shuts everything down. They won't be laughed at, people who misuse it. And I want to highlight this just to ask you what you think. What do you think of the label, instead of Islamophobia, anti-Muslim bigotry?
Yeah, I think that actually works quite well. Yeah, I think it's not a popular term. It's like using a new term in a way. So it's like it's something worth thinking about for sure. But yeah.
Okay, I have a very controversial question for you. So, is it fair to say that most Muslims are bigoted towards the LGBT?
I would say in authoritarian countries, yes, for sure. Probably yes.
So is it Islamophobic to say that most Muslims...
No, it's not, no.
Okay. I think a lot of people would find it, not you and me, but a lot of people, if I say most Muslims are homophobic, they would say that's Islamophobic to say that. But that's a line that I don't like shouting, on the top of my lungs. Most Muslims are homophobic. Everyone, you should hate Muslims for being homophobic. I don't like doing that. But it is factually true that most Muslims are homophobic. It puts me in a very weird position where I'm not sure how to point it out without, increasing hate towards Muslim when it's actually towards Muslim people. So what do you think what do you think our position should be about that?
No. I think criticizing Muslim communities is perfectly fine. Criticizing any community is not bigotry. No community is beyond criticism. And I think it is perfectly fine and fair to say things like that. I would say whether it is considered bigotry or not depends on your further analysis or conclusion that you try to draw from these facts. I would say the fact in itself, there's nothing Islamophobic about it. It's like saying, for example, gay men are more likely to have HIV. Is that homophobic? No. It's highlighting an issue, but it's not necessarily homophobic unless you try to use it in a specific way, or to advocate that the government should restrict people's freedom, or that these people are bad, we should judge them, they're like demonic or whatever. Then yes, I would say that would be homophobic. But merely pointing out like something like this is not. Speaking of statistics, there is a very interesting video on YouTube with millions of views by Ben Shapiro called "The Myth of the Moderate Muslim." And it's like the video is basically very misleading. I would say this video is Islamophobic or anti-Muslim bigoted towards Muslims. And the reason why I use the word Islamophobia here is because it is actually fear-mongering. Like, it does promote this idea, over 90% of Muslims support Sharia. Obviously, the word Sharia to a Muslim means the teachings of Islam that includes prayer, zakah, fasting, etc. So he's kind of want to imply like the average Muslim supports like a Saudi Arabia style of regime. Or like over 20% of Muslims said that it can be justified to bomb civilians, but a higher percentage of Americans said yes to the same question. He didn't mention that. So there's like a lot of cherry picking here and there. And I think that's, I would say that is a very big problem, and it does lead to all of these issues I mentioned earlier. And yeah, I also wanted to further highlight, I spoke about myself, the situation with my girlfriend in Portugal. I think many people saw that, understood from what I said that her parents were concerned about whether Egypt is a safe country or not. They were not. They didn't cite any issues regarding, actual issues in Egypt. Their issue was that I'm a Muslim, therefore I'm a terrorist. They reported me to the Portuguese authorities as a terrorist. The Portuguese authorities, they reported me through friends they knew in the Portuguese police counter-terrorist department. They took that allegation seriously. I don't know. I might be on a terrorist watch list. There's going to be legal action to uncover that. My family was also labeled terrorists. And the idea of Egypt being a scary Muslim country, I use that term, emphasis on the word Muslim. They mean it's a country with a lot of Muslims around. I've seen people in the comments say, or in the chat say, there's like these rational issues with Egypt. It's like they didn't cite any of these reasons. That's the thing. And yeah, many people were like, think about it from the parents' perspective, and that's what I want you guys to do. I mean, first of all, it wasn't the parents, actually. The parents were against her being locked up. It was her brother that locked her up. And I said I didn't want to share a lot of details, but I did say it in the comments. Like, her brother actually like fake raped her to show her what it's like to do. That's what Muslims would do, right? And yeah, that's like what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about whether Egypt has issues or not.
I really empathize with her and your situation, but I would appreciate a heads up next time before you drop that bomb on us. Yeah, that's I don't know what to tell you really, because no one deserves to be labeled a terrorist and investigated for that, for not doing anything. I understand that. And I understand why they have these ideas about someone they've never met, like you or Egyptians or Muslims. I don't think what they did was justified. I think that she is in a very abusive situation, and I hope that she gets out of it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if we're talking about her safety, like, do you think she can just book another ticket? Like, people that think about it from, the parents' perspective, isn't like trying to protect her. It's like, the way you do that is you communicate with her, you communicate with me, you work with us rather than against us. That doesn't help anyone. I also want to mention that many people said false things about Egypt, and this is like a bit of a tangent here. I'm all in favor of highlighting issues with Egypt, by the way. I've talked about some issues in Egypt in the last stream. I'm not against that. And by the way, I'm not gonna share all the details about my case. I'm just, there's a lot of horrible details. I don't think I'm obliged to share them. We're not talking about people having actual reasonable concerns. We're talking about people that ignored her will, her rights, her parents' rights, even, and yeah, they were met by approval by those around them, including people in the authorities. And yeah, I found people were saying that there are there was a top light comment that said like Christians cannot become judges in Egypt, which is bizarre. Egypt's chief executive judge is Christian. Like the number one judge person is Christian. The head, not the Supreme Court justices, the head of the Supreme Court justices. Discrimination against based on religion is unconstitutional. That's not to say it doesn't exist, not even on a systematic level. It does exist both on a systematic and individual level. Mostly individual. I don't think our regime cares that much about oppressing Christians. But yeah, there is definitely issues regarding Christian rights in Egypt, but it's unconstitutional. It's not like legally Christians cannot become this or that. Like legally, they're perfectly equal in every way. The one thing they cannot become, I guess, is like the Imam of Al-Azhar or the Grand Mufti or something, just like a Muslim cannot become the Pope. But yeah, just wanted to highlight that there was a lot of misinformation in the comments. And again, top like comments. I'm not even talking about small like comments. I think I just want to emphasize due diligence. Speaking of the comments, another thing I wanted to talk about is this idea of the Muslim world. So let's talk about that for a second. I don't think it's fair to say the Muslim world or the atheist world unless we're specifically talking about religious demographics. Like, imagine if I were to say Christian countries are scary because some Christian countries have these issues, like Christians are drug cartel trafficking people. You're going to be beheaded if you go to a Christian country because some Christian countries have these issues. Or like if I were to look at Latin America or South African countries.
Wait, but who says that people are going to get beheaded for going to a Muslim country?
I've seen people do say, I'm doing a hyperbole here, but yes, I do find many people that say that, even in the comments in the last video, I'm literally pointing to that, that Muslim countries have these issues, therefore, or the Islamic world have these issues, therefore Egypt has this issue. And to me, I think that's unfair. I'm not saying Egypt is a country in a great position, by the way. I think the term Islamic world itself is kind of like bizarre. There's no connection between Egypt and Kosovo, for example, except both being Muslim majority countries. Kosovo is a developed economy, a democracy, a female democratically elected president, by the way, fun fact. It's a Baltic country, however, it has issues, geopolitical issues, because they're in a problematic region, I guess. Egypt, on the other hand, is a highly authoritarian country, and yada yada, right? I don't think I need to go into the details. I don't think there's any similarity between the people's attitudes, between society, between culture, between politics, between economy, whatever it is. I don't.
It's hard for me to follow what you're saying without having a concrete example of like what it is that we're objecting to here. Like what example are we talking about?
So one comment said, many Muslim countries have the kafala system, so it's not our job to be aware or to be like, our job is to take precautions. So as a precaution, we're not going to visit any Muslim country. And it's funny because Israel and Lebanon, a Jewish and a Christian majority country, also have their variant of the kafala system. And the Muslim countries that have it are Gulf countries. So it seems like there's a geographic connection here rather than a religious.
Well, I agree that the kafala thing is in the Gulf countries. It's not a religious thing. But there are some objections about the Muslim world or Islamic country specific. Like, let's say, for example, like, I don't know what Christian country, so to speak. And yeah, by the way, I don't think Lebanon is a Christian majority country, but
used to be Catholic majority. Today, Catholicism is the dominant religious group. Muslims are technically a majority, but they're split between Shia and Sunnis. The reason why the change happened is because of influx of Palestinian refugees. However, they used to be Catholically absolutely dominated and still had the Catholicism.
Okay, but putting that aside, though, in most countries that are Muslim dominated, there are a lot of things that specifically have to do with Islam or people's belief
Mhm.
that would get you in trouble that wouldn't be the case in a so-called Christian country. Like
Mhm.
some of these generalizations, again, I'm not the kind of person who goes around just making generalizations all the time, but some of them are valid. It depends on what we're talking about. Um,
Mhm.
like in what countries in the world would saying something wrong about Jesus get you imprisoned? I don't say beheaded necessarily, but imprisoned, tortured, maybe even,
There is actually a famous example, Amos Yee, who got imprisoned in Singapore for blasphemy charges. Yes, blasphemy charges do exist in Christian countries. The common theme is authoritarianism, however.
right,
If you look
but
at Latin American,
isn't there a huge overlap between that happening in Muslim countries? Like you want to call it, yeah, because of authoritarianism, but there's a huge overlap of all that stuff happening in Muslim countries. You might find examples of that happening in, like, I don't know, Christian countries, but in most of the world, like I can say in most of the world, you won't get hunted down for saying something blasphemous. You might in India, for example, even though that's not a Muslim country, that does happen.
Mhm.
But I think it's fair to say that if you're a certain kind of person, you should probably avoid Muslim countries if you fear persecution. Like that could be valid to say.
No, I think the common theme again is authoritarianism, not religion. I do think it's bizarre to make a connection based on religion because, as I said, if you look at authoritarian countries, if you look at freedom of speech in Latin America
So
and Africa
all
in
Arab
general,
countries
it's
are
not doing so
authoritarian,
hot.
is what you're saying.
Not all. I would say there's a few exceptions, but yeah, you would
Like
find that
which
if you
Arab
were talking
countries
about the
are
Middle
not
East specifically,
authoritarian? Like which ones are not?
I would say Tunisia. I would say Tunisia and Lebanon are relatively
But
more
you might
progressive.
still face the same kind of persecution in Tunisia, and it's a Muslim country.
No. There is a case about a woman that was sentenced for making fun of the Quran in Tunisia. However, that was an unconstitutional ruling. Freedom of speech is protected in the Tunisian constitution.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know if
how
she went
good
to a
is
higher
that?
court.
Like how good is that to someone who does get persecuted? Like what's frustrating here
It,
is that I feel like you're going out of your way to say, like, sure, you
Mhm.
might link it to authoritarianism, but there's a huge overlap between people being very religious and being very authoritarian, regardless of what their political system actually is. So, like,
Um,
is it in a coincidence
I,
then that in all Muslim countries, all Muslim majority countries, you might get hurt or persecuted by the people or the system for blasphemy, but that's not really a theme in other
Mhm.
countries, at least not like as a general theme?
I disagree. I do think if you look at Muslim majority democracies, if we exclude ourselves to that, if you look at, uh, so again, if we look at Kosovo, Rojava, Tunisia, Turkey, etc., and I would say Turkey is like the most fundamental example out of those.
Is Turkey
Uh,
even an example of a Muslim? Turkey was like half European. I don't know if that's an example of a Muslim country.
what does European have to do with it?
I mean, the mix of people in Turkey and how secular the laws are, like that's a very different
Mhm.
situation than Egypt, for example, majority Muslim country.
Mhm.
Like that's a
Turkey
very different
is
situation.
Turkish religious. No, I'm pretty sure Turkish is like massively Muslim, but let me actually confirm.
I think they're secular by law, but you'd still face some
Yes,
issues
it is.
there. Like in many areas, I'm sure you would still
19,
face some issues for blasphemy.
99.8% of the population is Muslim in Turkey.
Yeah, that's because they count people like us as Muslim, right? Like that's I don't know if that really counts, but the point is, isn't it factually true that in Muslim communities you would get harsher backlash on average than in other religious communities or other communities in general?
In the world today, yes.
Yeah. So I don't see what it is that we're trying to change here in the way that we're talking about.
No, so I'm trying to make a statement that the problem is, again, if the problem was the people being Muslim, if the problem was related to the prevalence of Islam in a given place, then you would expect to see that in Muslim democracies that they would favor authoritarianism. In the examples where Muslims do vote for fundamentalists, there's good reasons for that. Like if we take Turkey as an example, you mentioned secularism, and yeah, that's actually, since Ataturk's era, there was a repression of religion. Being wearing a hijab or a cross in public was outlawed. Even churches and mosques had restrictions. Many people, and obviously right now the economy isn't doing so hot. So many people in the Islamic world in general, not just in Turkey, view Erdogan as like the only leader who is like a sole champion of the Islamic world. And Turkish people are sick of this repression of religion that they've seen since Ataturk. Even Erdogan went to jail under secular Turkey for criticizing the state. I'm not a big fan of Erdogan, by the way, and I think Turkey is headed in the wrong direction, just for the record. But people yearn back for these days where, because we can talk in theory about why secularism is better than fundamentalism, right? You can like take back out a pen and paper and say secularism is more liberal, fundamentalism is more authoritarian. But if you think about it from the Turkish people's perspective and why they voted for fundamentalists,
I
it's
think we're
because they
really
yearn
losing
back for these
perspective
days.
on what we're talking about. So
Mhm.
you're saying that it's unfair to say that you shouldn't go to a Muslim majority country if you're a certain type of person, or in a Muslim majority country you're more likely to be
I would say, I
persecuted
would
for
say,
blasphemy.
I would say, just look at the country. If like just investigate the country.
Most Muslim majority countries, you would get in trouble for a lot of things, like not even
I'm not disagreeing
intentional
with that.
blasphemy. Yeah. So
Yeah, no,
so what are we like? You're trying to say that it's not actually about Islam; it's about
no, I think it
authoritarianism.
is unfair. I think it is unfair to say that Egypt has these problems because A, the Islamic world has these problems when it may or may not apply to Egypt. I do think that is an unfair generalization. And B, that Egypt has these problems because it's Muslim majority. Because again, if you look at Muslim majority democracies, we don't see these problems. So it's almost like the
What
political
like I feel like
system.
Muslim majority democracies are like, what examples are there? Like very far and few in between.
Yeah, I agree they are few, but it would be like saying sub-Saharan African Christian nations are very few, far in between to be democracies, or Latin American Christian majority countries. I would say geopolitics has a lot to do with it, and not so much religion. Again, as I mentioned, in Egypt, if you ask the average person in Egypt what do they think of Sisi, you're going to hear some vulgarities. I do stand by that. I don't think we're authoritarian because the population is Muslim.
If
I think enough
If
is.
Egypt changed to less of an authoritarian country and more of a democracy, do you think people would be persecuted less for blasphemy?
I would think we would go down the Tunisian path, yes. We saw it happen in Tunisia. It's a
I
fellow
mean,
North
people still
African
are
nation.
persecuted in Tunisia for blasphemy.
The last 2 years, there was more authoritarian reforms. Things are not perfect, but you do see that massive progression. I don't think we can really deny that.
I think it's tied to religion. Like, how do you take it away from, like, just by changing the political system? It's never going to change that people will get angry at blasphemy because religion tells them to.
True. So here's what will happen when you change to a more democratic system. The thinkers will stop being jailed. People that speak about Islamic reformism will be able to speak more freely. You see these kind of people jailed in Muslim countries. So the only dominant attitude is the authoritarian one, because that's the only one that favors the system. So the system only allows for that attitude to exist. So yeah, I do think that this will naturally lead to a more progressive society. We saw that happen in European societies. We saw that happen in Muslim societies that are more democratic. And yes, people will get angry, just like people still do get angry in Christian democracies about someone insulting Jesus. But you won't get killed for it. Let's use Turkey as an example. Hassan Abi, I know you're covering your face for safety reasons, and I understand that, right? But let's look at Hassan Abi, the biggest political Twitch streamer on the planet. He has his face out in the open. He's an ex-Muslim. He openly criticizes religion in general. And he when he travels, he vlogs in public. He goes to public events. He doesn't hide anything. His face is out there. One of his uncles is famous. He doesn't mind showing his family on stream. Not
I don't
once was
think
he harmed
he
or
makes
received any
he
problem.
doesn't make his point to be about religion. Like, as
Mhm.
far as I understand, he talks about all sorts of things. Like, he is
Yeah, I
he's
understand.
not an ex-Muslim in terms of, like, he's not an ex-Muslim activist in any shape or
Yeah.
form, right? He might at some point says, and some people say even identifies as Muslim, like he gets away with that. So that's a very different dynamic than someone saying, I don't like Islam and here's why. That's when you get
Mhm.
attention on you.
I disagree.
So
I've talked to ex-Muslims in Turkey. No, they say they can openly say whatever they want. Like, they even, they haven't faced any issues because of it. So
then
it
how come
depends.
Apostate Prophet can't even, like, go back to Turkey? He had mentioned he had issues with Turkey because of his channel. Like, there's a difference between being cool with your friends, around your friends, and like no one gives a shit about religion, and being someone who criticizes Islam and not being persecuted for it. There's a big difference. Like Turkey, there's a lot of people do a lot of haram things in Turkey, right? Like they can drink, they can do all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you can have circles where you blaspheme or you say Islam sucks, but it's not really the same as criticizing Islam on a platform.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I see, I like Hassan, the guy that you mentioned, Hassan
Hassan
Abi.
Abi.
He's a huge streamer, right? Like that
Yes.
also affords him a lot of immunity. That's different than, and he's a huge streamer who's loved by many for many reasons that have nothing to do with religion. That's different than someone like Apostate Prophet. Maybe he has, you know, a lot of supporters, but also he's hated by a lot of people, and he speaks directly about religion. Turkey still isn't a place where it allows for that kind of thing.
I would say Hassan Abi is being a political content creator is controversial by nature. If you talk to the average person who knows him about him on like
But
Discord or
isn't
something,
that a testament to
it's just gonna
something
be.
that he can be that controversial, but because he's not controversial about Islam, he gets away with it. But had he just said like a few things about Islam that just
He
made
does
it
say
clear,
things about Islam.
like he says things in passings, but has he ever had made a video where he's like, "Hey, let's talk about what sucks about Islam and you know how we can fix things"?
No, that's not the kind of content he makes.
Exactly. And that's indicative of something. The guy can say very controversial things and have enemies in politics and still not get harmed or threatened, but you make a video about Islam and then you get all that stuff. Isn't that indicative of something?
Yes, I do agree. But again, let me re-emphasize my point here. I'm not saying Muslim communities don't have a problem. I'm not saying Islam isn't, as a religion, doesn't lend itself to these issues. However, I do think it would be unfair to generalize societies based on what you perceive to be religion, based on like, you know, you open, if we talk about like the recent rise of fundamentalism in Turkey, it's not because people open the Quran in the mosque and conclude I need to vote for the PK party. It's because of completely different reasons that I just mentioned. A different example I can mention is Lebanon and Hezbollah. Lebanon being a Catholically dominated country until recently, with even the Muslim population, I believe, being Sunni majority. The leading party is a Shia fundamentalist party. Why? Well, for political reasons. I can delve deep into it. I don't think it would concern your viewers very much. But it's actually not because people endorse Shia fundamentalism. There's completely different reasons for it. Even in the case of Turkey, where people do endorse religious fundamentalism, it's not because they opened the book and they heard their sheikh say that's what I should vote for. It's actually completely different reasons. And I think if you look at
I think
different and
you're
other
minimizing the
societies.
contribution of religion here, because say there are other factors that cause people to have that position, and then religion makes them shout it at the top of their lungs.
Yes.
Like, so we can't just say that you know, religion is, it's generalizing that religion is a big factor. I think it's very true that religion is a big factor.
I agree.
So
I'm not disagreeing. Again, I'm not disagreeing. Yeah. I do think the problem here is generalizing that this country has these problems because this other country has these problems and both countries happen to be Muslim. I do think that is a bizarre take. I'm not saying Muslim communities don't have a problem. I think maybe there's
I think there's a huge correlation and causation between the religion of Islam and certain problems. No matter how the different countries arrived at them in different ways, at the end of the day, they're quoting the same scripture in a way or another.
Yes.
Like it doesn't matter because of what politics that one country has extremists and the other has different flavor of extremists. If at the end of the day, they're both gonna, you know, drag you down the street for insulting Muhammad.
So yes and no. I would say there are Muslim majority secular pan-Arab nationalist parties where Salafists get tortured in prison and whatnot. I would say there's non-Muslim countries that also have similar problems. I would say, again, the common line isn't necessarily religious demographics. I do agree that Muslim communities do have certain problems. I do agree that religious apologists do promote harmful ideas. I think I'm sorry. I think there might be we might be like arguing different points here. Like, yes, I agree. Muslim communities do have problems that are worth calling out. It is worth criticizing the contribution of religion in these instances. Absolutely. I'm not disagreeing here. Where I'm disagreeing, however, is this idea that this country is Muslim, therefore it has this problem. I think you can just look up this country. It's that simple, and whether it has this problem or not.
So
I don't
most
think.
Muslim countries or most Muslim majority countries would have such a problem. So
Mhm.
you're basically arguing in favor of the few exceptions where they do exist.
So there is, yes, the few exceptions. Again, I'm drawing a consistency test here. So if you have an idea, right, this is what we do in science. It's the problem of induction. We probably know about the white swan problem.
The white swan problem? No,
Yeah.
please do tell us.
Okay. So it's this idea that the Dutch believed that all swans are white because that was their observation until they started to colonize the world and they saw that black swans actually exist. This is how we do scientific theories. We make a hypothesis. As long as this hypothesis is consistent with the facts, then it becomes a scientific theory, an approved and proven scientific theory. When it comes to, we can apply the same method to politics. If we want to understand, so your hypothesis is that Muslim
Is that
societies or
Muslim societies are very intolerant towards blasphemers, for example.
Yeah. And it's like, does that pass the consistency test or not? Versus my hypothesis, which is that authoritarianism is not tolerant to different discourse, to unacceptable opinions. And I think if we just do the consistency test, it seems like my hypothesis offers a better explanation as to why we see this phenomena to a very much more accurate degree.
For your hypotheses to actually become relevant or usable, we would have to see Muslim countries that aren't authoritarian.
Yes.
But we're not really seeing that.
I just mentioned a few examples.
But in these examples, people would still get in trouble and Muslims would still harm the people who blaspheme. So how does your hypothesis hold true?
Do you mean like hate crimes?
Hate crimes, and also like maybe if not actual like persecution by law, then the Muslim community would really go out of their way to do something about it. So that doesn't really hold up with your hypothesis.
No, I disagree. I do think if we're talking about like individual acts, people get killed for all different sorts of reasons in all different countries. Like I think you probably are.
It's a uniquely Islamic problem, though. Like let's not.
No. I think if we're talking about Portugal as an example, Portugal is a Catholic country. I'm sure you know about the Spanish Inquisition. Their attitudes towards religion is that, basically, you probably know about sex abuse scandals. The reason why these exist in the Catholic Church is because even to this day, it is not normalized to criticize the Catholic Church. This is the strongest and least criticizable religious institution on the planet. Doesn't even compare to Al-Azhar. Like,
I don't know if that's true. There's a lot of criticism of the Catholic Church, at least in the public domain. But I mean,
maybe on the internet. But I'm talking about.
Let's talk about the problem of blasphemy.
So
would you get beheaded in Portugal for blaspheming against Christ?
Let me continue my point, and I'll get back to you.
Sure.
So yeah, I do think the reason why these sex abuse scandals exist is because if you criticize the priest for sexually abusing you, a child, a man, whatever, a man of the cloth who has the Holy Spirit in him, you'll be seen as someone who is making a false rape allegation. The church will try to cover it up. The society will reprimand you for it. The police and the court will be biased against you. And that's why many of these cases, when they're investigated, you find a scandal where hundreds or even thousands of people were raped in a single scandal. The reason why it's been covered up so long until we got to that point is because, yes, you are not allowed to criticize the church. That is a very, very common problem
but people do criticize it. Like people do criticize it, and something is being done about it. It's not a solved problem. But I don't see how any of that ties into, like, that's a different problem than saying specifically where there's a huge population of Muslims, you're more at risk of getting harmed for upsetting them about Islam. Like those two things are very disconnected.
I'm not, again, I'm not in disagreement here. Like, look, if we're talking about Egypt, I have talked to ex-Christians who cannot criticize Christianity publicly, or actually jealous of Muslims, because in Islam, the bottom line is basically, don't insult the Prophet, right? If you can disagree with Al-Azhar, Sheikh Al-Azhar has said many things that people have made publicly fun of. Christians cannot dream of doing that about the Pope. I do think this idea of you are not capable of criticizing religion being a Muslim-specific problem. If you look at Muslim societies where that is the case, and you look at Christianity, it's not very different. And yes, you can get in jail for blasphemy in Egypt for criticizing Christianity as well. It's not a denominational problem when you look at Egypt. When you look at a given society, you find that, yes, it applies to Christians as well. It's not just Muslims specifically.
It does apply to Christians as well, but I would tell you confidently that the stats are higher with Muslims. Like, who are we kidding here?
You cannot dream of criticizing the church here if you're a Christian.
But people do. Like, there's TV shows about it. There are TV shows that have to take down their episodes.
Sorry, as Christians, let me clarify.
But who, I mean, as long as non-Christians get to do it, like, I mean, sure, yeah, you'd get excommunicated or whatever, but is it the same? Like, how many times have you heard of an ex-Christian being beheaded in a secular country because they offended, Christ or something?
How many times have you heard of a Muslim being beheaded in a secular country because they offended Muhammad?
Not a Muslim, but didn't it just happen in France a few years ago? Like, that's still a worry. It just happened to what's his name, the author,
Charlie Hebdo.
No, not just Charlie Hebdo. Like, see, there's so many examples of that. The author, Salman Rushdie. Like, this is a uniquely, and I don't like highlighting this, but I feel like you've given me no choice but to highlight this. It is a more uniquely Islamic problem. I'm not saying Christianity wouldn't have been in this place a few hundred years ago, but at the moment, this is a uniquely Islamic problem.
I agree. It is much more prevalent in the Islamic world because
and outside the Islamic world.
But yes, in the world today, sure.
Yeah.
And I would like to, speaking of Charlie Hebdo, I think this is actually an example that supports my point rather than the other way around. Because the shooters have actually cited their motive. These people have prepared for a long time. These people didn't do it overnight. They had fully automated weapons. They had a plan to shoot people in public and then creating a hostage situation before the police comes and then talking on public television. So, this is not like an overnight, people made drawings, let's shoot up some people. They had planned to conduct an attack previously, and they cited French terrorism in Mali as a motive. I know the reason why they targeted the cartoonists is because it was a hot topic. It would get attention. They might have been
even if that is true. You don't see Muslims around the world celebrating it and actually advocating for it to happen again. You don't see people in the UK getting stabbed, like Hatun Tash. I don't necessarily like her. She got stabbed for it. Like, we can't just say that it's all a conspiracy and it has nothing to do with Islam. Don't you see that it's a uniquely Islamic problem?
I would say it is a more prevalent problem in Islamic societies. Yes.
So that equates to it's a uniquely Islamic problem.
Yes. And I would say generalizing it based on the concept of Islamic societies is also a problem. I would say...
I don't see how that is a problem so far. Like, I still don't see how that is a problem.
No, I would say this idea of if you have a higher Muslim population, you're going to have more of these problems. I would say if you have next to no Muslim...
Isn't that true? Okay, I think he cut out. I did not mute him. I feel like the caller is being a bit of a contrarian or like sitting on the fence about things. And I don't like, I don't make videos every day being like, hey, you should be afraid. Whenever there's a Muslim around, you should be afraid. But let's not walk on eggshells. It is true. You have to be more careful if you are criticizing Islam. Like, I'm not saying everyone should be scared all the time. I'm saying if you're someone who crosses the line in a way, and I'm not saying that you're doing something wrong by crossing the line. If you cross those arbitrary lines that religion has set and expectations in society, there are more factors than just what religion says. Unfortunately, the caller has cut out, so I'll have to move on to the next one. But this is a fact. It is a fact that unfortunately, it's a unique problem right now that is amplified in the Islamic world and Islamic societies all around the world. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with inherently, biologically, what Muslim people or people from races that happen to be Muslim are like. Has nothing to do with there's a lot of factors that go into it, but in reality, this is a problem. Why do you think I'm wearing a mask? Like, do you know how far in my life I have to go to make sure that none of this comes out, that I have to be very careful? People don't do this with other religions. This is why I'm doing this. Why did I give away a huge part of my life to do this? Like, if it was safe to do this, you think I would be doing this if other people were doing it? I feel an obligation to do this because of how risky it is and how I'm in a uniquely, I don't know, good position to do it. I think the caller has good intentions. I think they're trying to say that we shouldn't generalize, and I agree with that. But it's not every generalization is automatically wrong. Like some things, like you have to be more careful in a Muslim society. If you're a certain type of person, that is true. That can be true. Like if you are gay, for example, if you even look like you're not absolutely straight, you have to be more careful statistically in more religious societies, and statistically more likely in more Muslim societies. You have to be more careful. Some of those things are just, it's dangerous to pretend that that's not the case. Like it's nice to think that it's all love and peace and everything, but some people are going to get harmed by not taking necessary precautions. Moving on to the next caller. Let's see. We've got hopefully I can take 3 more callers. I'll try my best. So we'll take the next caller is Tyler. Tyler, I hope you're ready because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Tyler. How's it going? Are you there?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're calling.
So my name is Tara. I'm from America, which, by the way, I love your videos. They're very thought-provoking. So the reason I believe as a Christian is that I'm a disabled man. I was born prematurely, and when I was born, the doctor said I wasn't going to make it. They said I was going to die. But my grandmother, she said a prayer for me, and I believe that's the reason I'm still here today.
Sorry, let me recap that. So you were born with a disability, and you say
yes,
your grandmother praying for you is the reason that you're here today.
Yes, that's what I believe.
I'm trying to tread very carefully because I don't know if would you like me to question your reasoning and try to ask you, some stuff about that?
Yeah, of course. I'm open to your answers.
So what makes you believe that your grandmother praying for you has saved you?
What makes me believe that is because God has saved me from certain situations. I'm not gonna get into all the details of certain things that happened, but God has saved me from certain situations, and I believe the power of prayer is such a powerful thing. Which I know you don't believe in God, but that's what I believe personally.
Well, let me ask you this question then. There are other people who are going through hardships or perhaps disabilities, and sometimes they end up dying or really suffering for a long time, or not being helped by God despite praying to God, the same God. Do you feel like that changes how you believe in God?
Honestly, no, because this life is only temporary, and at the end of this life, we are going to be healed. We're not going to be in any more pain. We're not going to be having any more disabilities. We're going to be able to be normal.
So if your grandma hadn't prayed, or she had prayed and God didn't save you, or say your condition had worsened somehow, would you believe in God then if your reason was that he saved you?
Of course I would.
Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
But yeah, that's just how I was raised to believe. But I never really thought about it. But like, that's very thought provoking.
Because I want you to think about that. You say that, and I don't want any of this to diminish your hope in life or the great thing that did happen to you. You know, that you perceive that Jesus saved you or God saved you because of that prayer. Whatever happened to you still happened. You know, if you got better or if you have a new outlook on life and if you're happier, that still happened, whether it was actually God that did it or not. So I want you to keep that in
Right.
mind.
Right.
So that doesn't go away even if your belief in God goes away. But if your reason to believe in God is that he uniquely saved you, right, for your grandma's prayer or for your prayer, and that would your belief wouldn't be affected if someone else wasn't saved despite praying, then by
Well,
that logic,
as
then
we know, because God has a plan for everything. We may not understand it at the time, but He has a plan. Now
but in
it
that
may
case,
seem
but in that case, how does it?
Oh,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If God has a plan for everything, that means that it doesn't matter what happens, whether God saves someone or doesn't, or helps someone or doesn't, because either way, God exists and God has a plan. So then, God saving someone or helping someone is irrelevant to belief.
Right. But like, yeah, I see where you're coming from there, right?
So, can you tell me, how does your belief in God affect your life?
Well, personally, it gives me hope because I know I'm not going to be like this forever. Because my life has been a struggle after struggle after struggle. My father wasn't around. It was me and my mom before she met my stepdad. I'm not going to go into all the details, but my life has always been some kind of a struggle. And because of that belief in God, that gives me hope that I won't be suffering in the end.
I'm glad that it does that for you. Does it? Does your belief in God affect your life negatively in any way?
Well, a part of me thinks that has that thought like, why would God send people to hell? You know, if we have such a loving God, why would He send us to hell? Think about that sometimes.
And what do you conclude from thinking about that, or do you have a conclusion?
Here's the way I look at it. If you're like a bad person, like say you kill people, for example, or whatever, I think there should be hell. Like if you're some kind of psychotic serial killer. But what I mean by that is that why would God send good people to hell? Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So you thinking about that question, you know, why would God send people to hell? How does thinking about that question affect you?
Sometimes it makes me question things, but I just remember what I believe and what the Bible says, and you know.
Does so aside from that questioning of you thinking, why does God send good people to hell, does that make you sad or affect you in any negative way?
It does make me sad because you know I feel like it's a bit unfair. But what do I know? Because
Mhm.
people may not get that opportunity to know about God, and like people in China, for example, they don't really know like God and stuff like that, and that kind of makes me a little bit upset, you know.
So that feeling. So let's say that we can summarize, and this is maybe not the most accurate summary, but your belief in God, the positive side, it gives you hope and it makes you happy in a way. On the negative side, sometimes it makes you sad because you think about good people who go to hell.
Yeah,
Do you think that the positives outweigh the negatives in your life? I mean, in this equation?
absolutely it does. Because
Yeah.
like I said, I know the suffering isn't going to be forever.
Then I feel like if your belief in God doesn't cause you to affect people in a negative way, and it doesn't overall harm you, like you gain more positive from it than negative, then I don't even I don't think that I don't think that your belief in God is harmful to you or to someone else. So I don't even really have a desire to pick it apart or ask questions.
And I know my faith. I don't force my religion on other people. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
open-minded to some things. Like if they ask about it, I will tell them some answers. But
Yeah.
the way I
Um,
see it, as long as we're good people, there's hope for us.
yeah. I mean, part of why I do this, and if I were to challenge someone's beliefs or ask more questions or poke into them, um, part of why is I think that some people who believe in religion or God, it may be any religion, like some people who believe in religion, the way that they believe affects them negatively and affects other people negatively. And that's when I feel like their belief should be challenged more. But if it
Right.
affects you positively, mostly, right, overall, and you're not harming other people, then I'm not against people having true as long as they're not harmful. Like
Right.
I'm not
Exactly.
saying that for sure it's not true, but from if say from my point of view, um, God doesn't exist or Christianity doesn't seem to be true, I don't really have a problem with you believing in it as long as it doesn't harm you or other people.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know you come from an ex-Muslim background, and just hearing your story, I'm glad. I'm glad you survived all that, and I'm glad that you're helping others. Like honestly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
But anyway,
Um,
you have any other questions?
not particularly. What would you say? Okay, let me ask you this question. So, say someone was in your position, struggling with life, one struggle or another, and they're not able to believe in God. Can you think of something that you could tell them that would encourage them that's not about God?
I would I would be there for them and comfort them. But I know you don't. Which I know you don't. I would say I know you don't believe in God, but hey, if you need a friend, I'm here for you. Like I talk to people, like I treat them human, no matter what faith you believe in. I still try to be there for them and try to comfort them in any way. Do some of
That's
their
very
favorite
nice of you.
activities with them, like video games and stuff like that. Whatever, doesn't really matter.
Is there any life advice or and can you change their outlook on life? Say they're not happy with their position and they don't have the privilege that you have of thinking that or believing that there's going to be a better life after this one. Um, what can you tell them to give them hope or make them feel better? Aside from offering yourself to listen and to play video games with them, can you think of anything?
My my life advice is that like do what you can. I know things are difficult, but just do what you can. And I know it's tough, but you got to keep going because there's people who do love you, who do care about you. Even when you don't realize that there's people who do care about you and want the best for you.
Those are nice words. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. You
Is there
keep doing what
anything?
you're doing.
Thank you. Is there anything that you want to ask me?
What 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 why did you decide to leave Islam? I know it has some issues, but what made you
Mhm.
decide to leave Islam?
When or what?
What made you decide to
Oh,
leave?
it was just gradual. Like it wasn't an active decision. It was just a gradual realization of I don't really believe that this is actually true.
Right.
And it's a summation of a lot of things, like including some of it is thinking about questions that apply to Christianity as well, like the fairness of why is God sending people to hell just for not believing in him, not really about doing crimes and all that stuff. Questions about, eternal punishment for finite crimes, like why is God
Right.
punishing someone forever? Um, there's a lot of things in Islam that point to it being the imagination of humans, or the and I don't use that word necessarily in a derogatory way, but there's a lot that points to it being inspired by humans, or coming from humans, just like every other thing that we have seen in existence. Like every piece of text that we've ever seen has been from humans, except a specific holy scripture that some people believe is from God. So it made more sense to me that it's also
Right.
from humans than it is from God, because I couldn't find anything that proves that it's from God. So I realized that I only believed because I grew up believing in it. And a lot of if not all of the arguments that I've heard for belief, or for my religion's belief, were very fallacious. And people didn't even believe because of arguments. They just believed because that's what they knew. So yeah,
Right.
it was
And
just
I read the
conclusion.
and
Sorry?
I read the Quran, and I just felt like so confused. And when I got to the chapter of like women, where it says to like beat your wife if they cause trouble, that made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Like I didn't feel comfortable. Like
Well,
keep going.
have you run into similar things from the Bible?
Well, the whole slavery thing, that also makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I know we're a lot more civilized now. But
But do you? Mhm.
some pastors kind of take it to the extreme. Like there was this one pastor that said autism is from demons, which I don't believe.
Well, how do you feel about things that make you uncomfortable in the Bible? Like, how do you deal with that discomfort?
I just said that stuff happened in the past where it doesn't matter now. We're a lot more civilized.
But
And
I mean, say you were born 400 years ago, or 600 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. People might still have been carrying out the things in the Bible that you find uncomfortable.
right.
So it's not
And
the Bible that has changed. It's just the
I
people.
really think that if I was born back then, I would probably not involve myself
Mhm.
because I don't agree with slavery or anything like that. It's horrible.
Yeah, I like to think so as well. That had I been born back then, I would not have agreed with it. But in reality, it's hard to say, because had I been born back then, I would have been a completely different person. I don't know.
Right, exactly. I
Yeah.
guess it really depends on where you come from.
Yeah, unfortunately, that really plays into it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining today and telling us why you
Thanks for
believe.
having me.
Yeah, of course. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too, bro. Stay safe.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you to the caller. So we've got, I'll try to take 2 more callers. I'm sorry to the other callers who are in queue. I just couldn't today. But I still got Ex-Convert and Sharaf. Oh my God. No, we still have a lot of callers. Yeah, Ex-Convert and Sharaf. Unfortunately, those are going to be my last 2 callers. But I think I'm not seeing him up here, but the caller we had, the Egyptian caller we had 1 caller ago, wanted to join again to wrap up what he was saying, but I can't seem to find him in the waiting room anymore. So I don't know. We'll give it a minute. Yeah. Secular Spirit says, what? No marathon and no 7-hour session. So that's something that I'd like your input, people who are watching right now and people who are watching after the stream is over. So I was thinking if I only stream on Wednesdays, and do it this kind of impromptu, let's take all sorts of callers thing, then I can do long streams and just, get people from all sorts of time zones, all sorts of backgrounds. But it'll just be, once every 2 weeks or something, or just make them short, 2-hour live streams. But that means that I'm going to cut off a lot of callers and I'm going to have a lot of callers not join. I'm not sure how to do it, to be honest, because I want to talk to everyone, but it's hard to talk to everyone. So I'm trying to do them more frequently, maybe so that they can be shorter. So yeah, I'll take the next caller right now is Xconvert. So Xconvert, I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? Are you there? You're muted. They might be away, unfortunately. We will give it a minute. In the meantime, I'd like to remind everyone, I recently started uploading to my second channel, Aladdin Reads. So check it out. I read stories on that channel that have nothing to do with religion. It's just a place for you to take a break. And if that channel does well, which I'm very far from that. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, if that channel does well, then that will give me another revenue stream so I can continue this channel, because people don't understand this. Some people don't understand this, but I really appreciate the support of people on this channel, and patrons and YouTube members. With them and the revenue stream from this channel, I'm able to have this channel and do work here. This is not really a cash cow in any means. I'm still trying to build up that revenue so I can do this for longer. So if I can manage to have a second channel where I read stuff that's not about Islam, that would help me continue to do this. So it's not really about collecting money. I'm actually digging into my own money to continue this channel. So I would appreciate it. I'm not asking you to give me more money. Just go check out the other channel. That would help me out a lot. So Xconvert, I think you're added twice. So let me try again. Hey, are you there?
Hey.
Yeah. Hi, how's it going?
Oh my gosh, you can hear me.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
So there's not any sort of echo or anything?
Sorry, your voice, say something again?
Can you hear me?
There's a bit of an echo. Can you use a different mic or?
I'm on my phone.
You're on your phone. Okay. Can you speak a little bit further away from the mic?
Okay, how's that?
I think it's a bit better. A bit further away?
How about this? Or maybe here?
I think it's better when you're far away. There's a bit of like the mic is clipping a little bit, but I think it's better now.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
So I reached out to my
Sorry.
Instagram.
No, we're hearing a lot of echo. Is your speaker on or something?
What's that?
Is your speaker on?
Yeah.
Can you turn down? Oh, well, then you can't hear me. Do you have earphones by any chance?
Default.
Do you have earphones that you can just use to listen?
I don't.
No? Okay.
Let me try to just talk. Can you hear me okay now?
Sort of. It's difficult.
Here, let me see. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Let me see if I can get on my laptop.
Sure. I'm going to mute you for a second. Once you have it sorted out, just unmute yourself and let me know that you're back.
Okay.
Okay, cool. In the meantime, let me show you guys what I'm talking about by what I mean by the second channel. So let's see if I can manage to do this. So I noticed that something that I do very well is that I don't leave a lot of silences or like quiet moments in my live stream. And that's not easy, to have hours and hours of continuous vamping or actual conversation. So, and I still did it again while I was loading this. So you're welcome. This is what I mean. This channel right here, Aladdin Reads, that's the one. So check it out. I just started uploading more frequently recently, and I'm trying out like a new format here. Tell me what you think. If you have any ideas for stories that you would like me to like, give me story ideas, because I don't think I can read stuff that's copyrighted. So please do check it out and let me know what you think. All right. Is the caller back? yet?
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to get in through my laptop.
All
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Okay, join.
Yeah. I'll read some comments while you try to figure that out. Let me know
Okay,
when you.
sorry about that.
That's all right. Okay, let's see if does anyone have any questions for me while we're waiting for the caller. Erica says, I'll definitely listen to the books channel. Thank you, Erica. MKWK says, the worst thing about your channel is that hijab's face is that hijab's face every time I tune in. So this is really annoying. I put in so much effort into videos that I think are really good, and they do all right. And then as soon as you mention one of these guys, those videos do really well. And if I really, if all what I wanted was views, I've been doing this for over 2 years now. Like not consistently, but it's been 2 years, I think, since I've opened the channel. I would have had 1,000 videos already about them, but I don't. And sometimes I wonder if I don't want to jump on that like views train, but sometimes I wonder if there is a need for their arguments and their drama to be addressed. But I just don't want to go down that route. So please don't push me towards that route. Just watch the videos that I make and stop paying so much attention to these dawah guys. Like, yeah, I want you to watch a video when I make it about them too, but just don't make it so obvious that you only care about them. It's I'm joking, of course. I know why people do that. I get a lot of viewers when I post one of those videos, viewers who are really into the whole dawah debate versus Christians versus ex-Muslim scene. And I don't think they're always watching these videos for the right reasons. So I don't like to make them very often. So every now and then, I would like to remind them, watch my other videos. That's what I'm here to actually do. Yeah. Let's see, what other comments was I trying to read? All right, we might have to go to the next caller, and then we'll try again with ex-convert, because I did say I want to keep these live streams to 2 hours, but I don't think that's going to happen today. Homo Sapien says, Aladdin, I can't wait for your stream with Hani from Critical Faculty. So that's going to be next week. I'm going to post about it at some point, but do check out that channel, Critical Faculty. We're going to be streaming together. I'm really looking forward to it. Ex-convert is here. You can turn off your camera specifically, and yeah, then you're fine. Let me know if you're ready, and I'll add you on. I agree with you. NF says, I wish we lived in a world where he didn't feel the need to make this channel or have to go the entire process of challenging doubt and faith. I wish so as well. Like I remember someone saying, I made such a wish in a comment before, and someone said, but then you wouldn't have any views. And I'm like, yes, I would love to be put out of commission. I don't want to be needed anymore, but we're not there yet. Okay, so ex-convert, I'm going to try to add you. Hope you're ready. 3, 2, 1. Hey, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Much better now. Thank you. All right.
Okay, now you're the one echoing, but it's okay. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, tell us what you would like to talk about today. Can you hear me?
Okay. Where do I start? It's taken a lot of courage. You there?
Mm-hmm.
To come on here and speak about my experience.
I feel like there's a connection problem still.
Yeah. Maybe I should let the next caller come in and I can do this another time.
Well, I can hear you now. Give it another try. Yeah, there is a huge delay, it seems. Well, I hope that you can join in next time. Next Wednesday, I'm might not be taking calls, but after that, it should be every Wednesday. So I hope you can join afterwards. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think she can hear me. Okay, well, I hope we get to hear from her next week. I'm so sorry that she couldn't join today. I find this funny. R says, "Why is this guy so calm? People want drama." I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Sometimes my glasses fog up. I can't control that. Okay, so hopefully next or the week after next week, we'll get to speak to the caller. Just FYI, next week is going to be a live stream on Wednesday as well, but I'm not taking callers. It's going to be different. It's going to be a 15K celebration in a way, but also it's going to be all about me. And you're going to attend and you're going to ask me questions and you're going to listen. But I'm not going to be taking callers next week. It is bath time for a poo in the background. I want to know what that cat believes and why. They believe that they're entitled to food, which they are. And why? Because I've gotten them accustomed to it. I'll read one more comment before I'll get to the last caller. Shut Up says, wait, am I supposed to read it or not? I'm confused. They say, Aladdin, you need to take on some of the Dawah bros, EF Dawah, Hamza's Den, Daniel, Ali Dawah, Mohijab, blah, blah, blah. They prey on ex-Muslims that aren't well-informed or well-spoken as you are. Well, the problem with that is, I mean, I did extend an invitation to Muhammad Hijab if you would like to talk. But the problem with taking them on or like, challenging them and all that kind of stuff is, do you really want 500,000 eager subscribers of their channels to bombard this channel? Like, do you know how much that would ruin the comment section and ruin these live streams? And it would just ruin all of this. Like, sure, maybe ad revenue is going to go up. Like, maybe my videos are going to get more viewers and maybe there's going to be more engagement from people who actually care about my videos. But also the amount of vitriol that I'm going to get from that is not worth it. So I do extend an invitation to talk to them, but I wouldn't like go appear on one of their channels or like bring all that attention over here. Yeah. Anyway, next caller or the last caller is going to be Sharaf, if Sharaf is still here. Yeah. I hope you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1.
Yo,
Hey, how's it going?
I'm alright, man. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So tell me who you are and what you'd like to talk about today.
I'm an ex-Muslim. I've been an ex-Muslim for like six years. I'm 20, so ever since I was younger. Mainly because I was raised in the UK with a bunch of white Donnies. I don't know if you could tell by my accent.
Not really, but yeah. So you're saying you're mainly ex-Muslim because you were raised in the UK?
Yeah. It was mostly because all of my friends were white, and I always doubted like, why the fuck am I supposed to be going to heaven and these aren't, type thing. And then it kind of deepened after that. But recently I started going to uni, and I've been reading the Quran recently, and I've been like treated very differently by Muslims, if that makes sense. I've been treated like badly because I'm an ex-Muslim, and I always thought to myself before I started reading the Quran that they're in the wrong because it's a religion of peace. And I've been reading it, and the view on apostles and stuff, I'm starting to doubt if they're even allowed to, like if they are allowed to.
Sorry, what the apostles? You mean the apostates?
Apostates. Apostates.
Yeah. You're starting to doubt if who's allowed to do what?
I've been treated not very nicely by a lot of Muslims, because they always assume because I look like a Muslim that I'm a Muslim, and I say no, I'm not. And normally it goes down well, but not in the university that I'm in. It's very, very Muslim orientated, and I get treated quite badly. I get shit said about me quite often that I can't even rebuttal. It's like, oh, he drinks, oh, he smokes, and shit like that. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like they're chatting shit, and I always thought to myself, they're not allowed to. They're in the wrong, right? But because the Quran that I'm reading, it kind of seems like they are. Like they're allowed to do much worse, And I just want to know, are they allowed to do that?
Like based on the Quran?
Based on the Quran, if they're allowed to chat shit to non-believers and apostates like me.
I mean, it depends on your definition of, talk shit and what it is that they're, um, like, it really depends, like, and it also depends on your interpretation of it, because, I mean, one could interpret that you're not supposed to talk about people behind their back or something, right? But
Yeah.
also one can interpret that those who spread corruption in the land, like, if you're spreading your ex-Muslim beliefs or spreading your bad beliefs about Islam and so on, um, your penalty is to be, a bunch of horrible things like mutilation and all that stuff. But it's not really necessarily a command for people to go do it just because you are, an ex-Muslim. It's really complicated. It really depends on their interpretation of it. But I think more problematic than the Quran is the hadith. Like, there's a lot more worse in that
Yeah.
about treatment of people who don't believe in all that.
Yeah.
But
I
so
agree.
what motivated you to be open about your disbelief or lack of belief?
Oh, bro, I'm not open about it. They just ask me like, "You Muslim?" and I'm like, "Nah." Like, I don't go out spreading it. Like, a few times they ask me why, and I give my reasons why, and they're normally like, "Oh, go find a scholar, go read the Quran," when none of them have, you know. But I'm the only one out of all of the Muslims that I know, because I was quite close with them. Like, I got to know them, and then I just find out shit, and then they treat me differently. Now I found out, it's just a bit sad, to be honest with you. Like, is having a girlfriend spreading hate? A Christian girlfriend, is that spreading hate?
Mhm.
I don't know about that one. Is smoking weed and minding your own business spreading hate? Is drinking a beer in my downtime spreading hate? I don't know. But that's why I came here, really. Like, are they in the right to treat me badly for just minding my own business?
I mean, are they in the right? Like, say the Quran does allow it or the Hadith does allow it. It still doesn't mean that they're in the right, right?
Oh, no. I mean, obviously, morally, like,
Mhm.
I'm completely against it, right? I
Mhm.
think it's a bunch of bollocks, right? If someone's minding their own business and doing no harm to anyone else, you have no right to chat shit. However, if the Quran allows it, they've got the high ground type thing. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like it doesn't even necessarily have to be said explicitly in the Quran. Like, there's a lot of verses that, call disbelievers and polytheists and all sorts of things, all sorts of names,
Yeah.
and that alone, and they may not even know these verses. Like, a lot of these people don't even know what's in their book. It's just the sentiments that they hear from other Muslims and they repeat them. So at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter that much whether they have the moral, like, religious justification for it, because, like, those people very often aren't even that good at reading the scripture.
None of them
So
have.
yeah,
None of them have. None of
I'm
them
not
have. I've
surprised.
done more than all of them. But like it's like heartbreaking, because I kind of read the Quran to like show them that what you're doing is wrong, even if I don't believe in it, right? And it's like I can't find anything to disprove what they're doing is wrong, and I'm finding the latter, so I'm in the wrong type thing, especially with the hadiths. And it's like, oh shit, you know, uh, that I they should speak shit about me type thing. Um, like, if I've got no evidence to say that I am a good person in their eyes, basically, because I do all these bad things.
But I mean, why are you trying to frame it through their belief system to try to justify yourself to them?
Because it's a very like, the university that I go to is very, very brown populated, right? And like, there's a certain floor of the library that I can't go to without getting really weird fucking looks. Like, what is he doing here? I don't go there anymore. Only because I never ever once said, oh, Muslims are bad and shit. I never believed that, right? But they thought of me badly just because all I said was I am a non-Muslim,
Hmm.
and they've seen me with a girl, um, and they've seen me smoke. Like,
Which you didn't volunteer to tell them that you left the faith. They're asking you.
oh no. They were like, oh, you Muslim, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not. And then
Right.
they ask why, and then I explain why, and that's it, right? That's all it is, and I'm just looked down upon straight away, right? And looking at the Quran, they are not in the wrong for doing that, like, at all. Like, treating me badly and not speaking to me, not treating me with respect, and insulting me and humiliating me in front of all of their Muslim hijabi friends and shit. Like, ganging up on me, basically. I'm the minority. which is really ironic because they like talking about Muslim, like, what's it called, like injustices in the West. And then as soon as they find each other, they cause an injustice to minorities. Just a bit weird. I struggle to believe, like, is Islam really a religion of faith or not when it comes to treating people with respect?
Wait,
That's
what do you mean by
basically
religion of faith?
Oh, not faith. Sorry, respect. Just respect. Is it a religion of respect? Like treat everyone nicely, type thing.
I think that's that would be a gross under. I don't know, like that's not accurate to say that all Islam is about, or it's consistently about treating others with respect. No, there's a lot of shit talking in the Hadith and the Quran. Like the Quran alone, I've pointed this out so many times. The way that, like, even in what was the surah? رأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم. There are a lot of verses where God is just saying, do you see this so and so bad character? That's because it's the same as the disbeliever. You know, there's a lot of correlation here and implication that people who disbelieve are bad people, and it's just, yeah, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry that you're going through all that, and I hope that you can find places and spaces to be in that aren't, you know, hostile towards you.
That's fucked, man. I can't. Like, I only started reading the Quran to, like, because I had so much faith even after I left the religion that it was a good religion. It was a religion of peace, right? And then I started reading it, and I'm more of a fucking atheist than I was before. Like,
Yeah.
the irony is just it hit, you know. Oh shit. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't really do anything.
No.
I'm glad that
Your videos
you.
and stuff, they're great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love them. Even the time to talk to us, it's very not only for me, I appreciate it like just a lot. Thank you.
I'm glad that I'm able to do that, and I hope that things change for the better for you. And I hope that you're not forced to look into this whole thing all the time, you know, because of them. You know.
I hope so, man. we'll get through it. You know. Cheers, though.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your day, man.
You too, bro. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, and I just wanted to point out to the caller, Homo Sapien says, ask him if he's ever heard of Faith to Faithless. I think that's an organization in the UK that might be relevant to you. Okay, I'll try to take ex-convert again if the call connects. Hopefully you're ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? You are still muted, by the way.
Hey.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
I can, but there's a huge delay, unfortunately.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Sorry, I had to remove you. There's a huge delay and there's a lot of feedback. It seems to be a problem with the internet. So I know I saw some messages that you had sent. I know that there's a lot that you want to talk about, and I do want you to talk about those things. So let's try for, you know, a next live stream, not next Wednesday, but the one afterwards. Hopefully by then we'd have some issues sorted out. But yeah, unfortunately, it seems like it's not working out today, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry about that, ex-convert. But yeah, hopefully we'll get to hear her story very soon, because I know she has a lot to say. So just to remind everybody, we're going to be live streaming every Wednesday. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. So we'll let one more caller join to finish up what he was saying. Hey.
Yo.
Yeah, welcome back.
So yeah, I think we kind of got lost in the sauce in our conversation earlier. I was trying to talk about things that are fake and people impose them on Muslim societies and start to talk about blasphemy, which I agree with you. Like, that's why I found it like hard. I was like on the defensive for something like I'm not disagreeing with. So it was like bizarre. It's like, I agree with you, but you know, I was kind of like in this bizarre position. I'm not disagreeing with you that yes, Muslim communities do have a lot of issues. I just wanted to point out that what I'm criticizing specifically is this attitude of taking things that are untrue or would only apply to few exceptions and then generalizing them. I mentioned a few examples of my own. I mentioned the video by Ben Shapiro. I mentioned the Eastern European attitudes. I mentioned my situation with Portugal, and these are the kind of things I'm talking about more than. And it's like I think it is unfair to say that if you have a higher Muslim population, you will have these problems, rather than, you know, yes, yes, Muslim communities do have certain problems. I completely agree with that, especially after the rise of Wahhabism in the Middle East. 100%. I'm not saying that's not the case, and I hope things can go back to, or go forwards even better, to a more open-minded attitudes towards dissenting opinions. Absolutely, I'm not.
I hope so
disagreeing.
too. And look, I don't. The causes might be different in a bunch of different countries, right? But
Yes,
but ultimately, a catalyst and the fuel to the fire is Islam. Ultimately,
yes,
that is true.
It is a complicating variable. I don't think it's the core reason, but I do agree it is a complicating variable.
But
for
here's
sure.
the thing, and here's where you and I might not see eye to eye, or like where I don't see the extra distinction being relevant, is because I think one solution out of that predicament is not to then undo the authoritarianism or how people arrived at using Islam that way. It's to actually get them questioning their belief and do away with Islam. That way, yeah, people might still be authoritarian and still be extremists about certain things, but at least we have dismantled one very powerful shield and weapon that is a factor in this. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
You mentioned the point that I was going to raise, which is, yes, countries that became atheist, North Korea, China, Eastern Europe, might have the same conservative tendencies that we see in religion, but definitely getting religion out of the picture is a step forward. I 100% agree with that. But yeah, I think it is far from being like the big bad regarding many of the issues.
I think it's a huge factor, and it's also the problem with it is it's also a unifying factor. Like it's a lot of different countries and different communities could have arrived at these positions in different ways, but then they're amplified together.
Yes,
that's unique to Islam.
I wouldn't say it's unique to Islam. I'd say it's more religion in general.
Sure, religion in general, but I think Islam is also
right now.
Particularly,
Islam is the most,
right now,
Islam is the biggest.
It is the biggest religion in that way, in the way that people are all simultaneously, they see each other in different, sects and all that, but also amplify each other when it comes to certain sentiments like that. Like whether it's a Shia or a Sunni, whether it's a Sufi or whatever, very often they would have the same views about blasphemy, for example. That's the
I would say,
thing.
I would say the solution moving forwards, isn't the Soviet approach. I would say it's more like, okay, it's the democratization approach. That's my opinion. I understand that democratic Muslim society is, we live in a globalized world, so I understand that they might not be as perfect in every single way, but again, because thinkers are not jailed, we see that progression. You still see the Wahhabist influence, and again, by Wahhabist influence, I'm talking about political influence by Middle Eastern monarchs. I would say if these regimes no longer existed, you would see way more progressiveness than if these regimes survived the fall of religion. That's, in my opinion, that's the case. I actually have certain sources open that I didn't get to quoting, but they were mostly like about the things I was talking about earlier, about like terrorism. I even had a few things about child marriage since you talked about that last video, but let's not get into it to save time. I have stuff on Al-Qaeda, and it's like, basically, I don't want to get deep into it. I will try to quote them very quickly. There's a British intelligence report. Let me post it.
Wait, let me pause right there. I've never spoken about, like, I don't really speak about terrorism, right? Because I know that there's more to it than just, religion says, God says, blow yourself up. There's a lot more to it than that. But I think that, like, I don't know what you're going to, like, we have to make this brief, but whatever you're going to say about, like, child marriage, for example, I feel like it's, even if there are other factors, even if there are other places that also do child marriage.
I'm not saying there are other factors in this case, actually. So if we look at like the opinions of different schools of Sunni Islam on the age of marriage, so there's a verse that says حتى إذا بلغوا النكاح, until they've reached the age of marriage. The verse is talking about orphans and when they can become responsible on their own money. The Shafi'i school says, I'm talking about female age specifically, says 15 is the minimum age. Hanbali also says the same thing. The Maliki says 17. The Hanafi school says 9 to 17, but this is misleading, you know, at least according to the table I'm looking at. This is misleading because Hanafis believe that puberty is the minimum age. Yes, Muhammad did marry a 9-year-old. That's messed up. When we look at the people, actually, I've watched many stories of parents that married their daughter off. Why do you say it? There's a UNICEF. I'll link a UNICEF article in the chat right now. This is a UNICEF article speaking about child marriage, and it is saying, addressing child marriage, I'm quoting here, recognizing the factors that enable it, while the roots of the practice vary across countries and cultures. That, by the way, does include many non-Muslim cultures and societies. Poverty, lack of educational opportunities, and limited access to healthcare perpetuated. So the perpetuation, according to the UNICEF, is not necessarily religious. I have saw people share their stories of why they sold their daughters, and it usually has to do with. So I'll link the source in case the comment here.
What is the point that you're trying to make with these sources?
I'm trying to say that in this case here, in the case of child marriage, people think that Muslims are fine with child marriage. And I think that's just wrong. You can talk to Muslims. They don't think that. Many Muslims aren't even aware of the Aisha thing. I just think, you know, I'm not aware of a single Muslim country where it's legal to marry someone before the age of at least 16. Usually it happens in war-torn countries and in poverty-struck nations, and usually the reason why people provide, the reason why people cite these reasons, and again, this applies to non-Muslims equally in these specific societies, it's because of poverty. I want to cheat.
Okay, I don't disagree with that, but here's the problem that's unique to Islam, right?
That the Prophet might be old, yes.
Yeah, not just that, but okay, forget the laws because people do skirt those laws. The problem is the normalization of, like, in their mind they think, okay, so one person did it, even though we're not supposed to do it, even though I may not do it, you know, I may not marry off my daughter, there's still more of an open avenue for it because of that. Like all the other factors do apply.
Yeah, in
countries.
Theory, yes. I would say in theory, yes, I agree with that. In practice, people, I haven't really seen people say these reasons or cite these reasons. The people that actually do it, they usually cite different reasons. And in fact, when I've seen religion being mentioned, they say, I know it's a sin. And many of these people are religiously illiterate, by the way. I don't agree with them that it's necessarily a sin. Like, yes, I know Muhammad married a 9-year-old. Like, I'm not disagreeing. But usually these are people that come from extremely poverty-stricken areas oftentimes in war-torn countries. They don't really know what they're doing. They're forced into it. They hate that they're doing it. They don't celebrate. If you look at the weddings, they don't celebrate them. They actually mourn during the wedding. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad. And again, if you look at the statistics provided by the UNICEF and the countries where it happened, you're going to notice that poverty is really the common variable here. Like, these are all societies with a lot of poverty.
I agree with that. The problem is that there are people all over the world whose beliefs are and morality is being tainted by having to justify it. Like, even though a lot of Muslims, and I never said that most Muslims would marry their child off, but there is a non-zero number who are more okay with it because Muhammad did it. And explicitly, there are da'wah people who say, yeah, actually, I would do it again today. Like, yes, I would gladly hand my daughter off.
Yeah, absolutely. That is, absolutely. I think it is worth criticizing these da'wah people for it. But what I'm criticizing is this notion that Muslims are predatorial that I have seen a lot. That's precisely the thing I'm criticizing. I think we're kind of like mismatching here. Yes, I agree that it is worth criticizing Islam. I agree that it does have a negative influence. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think I'm agreeing with what you're saying. But I think, you know, you're disagreeing with what I'm saying, even though, like, it sounds like you're disagreeing with something I'm saying, but I'm not really saying it. But I hope I've made my point clear, yeah?
I think I understand where you're coming from. And I do say that like,
yes, religion is a complicating variable.
And I try to explain why, like I try to explain why the marriage justification thing, the Aisha thing, is a problem. It's not just because it does perpetuate harm. I think it does provide an example for some people and a precedent for some people, but also how much it deteriorates someone's more idea of morality in their mind when they're forced to be okay with something that's so obviously not. It doesn't mean that Muslims do marry off their children today. Like that's not what I'm saying, or that Muslims are more okay with predatory people, but it also, I don't know what to say. Like I think I've said all I could about it. It's so tiring to have to like explain to people exactly what it is that's wrong. I feel like this should fall on Muslims to do, not on us. Like I do my best to clarify exactly what I'm talking about, but I feel like this should fall on Muslims to argue within themselves and explain, what they believe, and it was okay, but it's not now, and all that stuff. That's their job. I can't carry their burden.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was during the revolution, I could be mistaken, but we had more free speech at the time. There was a debate on television here about child marriage. And yeah, I think we need more of that. And obviously I think you're familiar with Abdullah Rushdie, is pretty much a pedophilia and marital rape apologist. Yeah, he got eaten alive. And it's like, yeah, I think we need more of that. Like, he is famous, not specifically because of his takes on these issues, but yeah, I think it is a good thing to have this open discourse that we don't really have today because of the lack of free speech. And I agree, the responsibility does lie on Muslims to discuss these things and call them out and criticize them. It's just that, unfortunately, we can't do that, or not we. I'm not Muslim, but the venue for that doesn't exist, and I think that's
whose fault
like the
is that,
big problem. It's I mean, I'm talking about legally speaking. Like, if you say something controversial, you might end up in jail. It doesn't even have to be something,
But that's like who's the like that's predominantly Muslims who are in charge of that.
It's not the people's will. No, the Muslims have no say in this case. We don't pick our regimes. Again,
No, but we're not talking just about like people getting in trouble for it and getting jailed. I'm talking in public discourse on Twitter or something, not in Muslim countries. Muslims don't do a good enough job of fighting these narratives. They don't. There's a lot of hands-off approach of like, okay, well, those are Dawah people. It's not. I mean, I don't know what they're saying. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're wrong. That falls on Muslims to talk about those Dawah people and to them. Like, I'm not just talking about in the political sphere. I'm talking about even in public discourse with people who are immune from that kind of thing. They don't do a good enough job.
I agree. I mean, I think there's a couple of examples. Maybe you can think of a few. But generally speaking, yes, I do agree that there is such a lack of criticism. A large part of it has to do with that the people living in Muslim majority countries, the thinkers, are oftentimes jailed. They're not allowed to publish. So as a result of this has a rippling effect on everyone else. Just like Wahhabism has a rippling effect on democratic Muslim societies, I think you can apply that to authoritarianism in general in majority Muslim societies, whether they are secular regimes or fundamentalist regimes. So I agree with you. I'm not in disagreement here. I do think there are issues in the Muslim society. I do think they are worth calling out. I do think that they're worth criticizing. The point I'm talking about, however, is people that generalize things that should not be generalized. And I just think there's like this demonization of Muslims that we see. I mentioned concrete examples of what I mean. I think we kind of like keep moving in the sauce a little bit, but I mentioned concrete examples of what I mean about how Muslims are treated and seen in various countries, about content that paints Muslims in a certain way. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, your kind of content. I'm talking about something else, right?
I would love to see, like, let me phrase it this way. I would love to see like a version of myself who is Muslim, who is, making it big on YouTube or whatever. Like say that video that you mentioned of Ben Shapiro. I wish there was a Muslim who would answer them back, but unfortunately,
there actually is, by the way.
But the majority of ones that gain traction are like the ones that are still siding with the bad things. Like it's hard.
No. There's Hakim. I think he removed the video though. A lot of his videos were removed. I'm not sure why. But Hakim is a communist YouTuber. He's from Iraq. He lives in Iraq, and yes, he like openly debunked the video by Ben Shapiro. He went through the points, even the bad points that Ben Shapiro mentioned. He didn't like deny them. He didn't move into denialism. Like rather, he explained why these things exist. A famous example is bin Ladenism. This is like the one example. I'm gonna post an article in the chat. I did it right now. This is an article from 1993 where bin Laden is seen as a hero by the United States because he was fighting the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. I know terrorism is not something I want to talk about, but yeah, bin Ladenism was popular in America at one point, yet we don't say the myth of the moderate American, right? Like I don't see Ben Shapiro making that video anytime soon where he says the moderate American is a radical extremist because bin Ladenism, right? Bin Laden was seen as like a fighting force against Soviet and American invaders, rather than, oh, he is a religious fundamentalist, Muslims are religious fundamentalists, that's why they agree with him.
I think that I still think that the onus falls on Muslims to have better representation than people like the Dawah people. And
yeah, I agree. I just do think that, again, like the venue for that is constricted to a large extent. There is still venue for it that does exist, and the criticism does exist.
It's not being used to its fullest potential. Like and when it is, like there are people who try to do that. I think the fact that they don't gain as much traction for reasons unrelated to government censorship, I think that's indicative of a problem, an ideological problem. Like the reason that Dawah people like Muhammad Hijab are more popular than, more centrist people, that's indicative of a problem with the ideology itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that changes.
I agree. I think people in general, when they look for religious fundamentalists or like the big religious figures that like quote the scripture, there is going to be a tendency for fundamentalism either way. So there's going to be a little bit of skewed demographic here. I do think that, yes, in general, Muslims might have less liberal ideas in a very generalistic global sense. Again, I don't like speaking globalist terms, but yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. Mm-hmm. I do think that you would see a massive increase in liberal values, just like you see in the Christian world in the West today, if you have a democratization rather than the non-liberal progress that we see in the atheist world in the East today. I don't think, again, religion is a variable, but I think ultimately it is, less than 10%.
I hope so, but I disagree because unlike the Bible, the Quran is supposed to be like, the Quran is a lot more rigid. Islam is in general a lot more rigid. It's the whole shtick is like it's unchanged. Like and now the difference is though, now we have the internet, we've taken a snapshot of religion. It's not like where it could have evolved like 400 years ago, like Christianity evolved. Islam is rigid and there's a snapshot of it now. That's the problem, I think, that's unique to Islam. So I do agree with you, but I think that
we can talk about the historicity of Islam, but I kind of disagree. As I mentioned earlier, that if you go back to 100 years ago, you're not going to see it's actually the tables are flipped. But I think inherently, I would argue Christianity is actually worse, specifically because
we're talking
of the
about this
system.
Snapshot right now, right?
Yes, snapshot right now, yeah.
And the way that Dawah is, they always keep saying Islam is unchanged, Islam is unchangeable, and this is preserved forever. Like this is the idea that's going to remain. Like gone are the days of ideological changes that make it into text, or now the text is forever preserved, like actually forever preserved.
I would say again, so the text, many people don't actually open the text to reach their attitudes. I would say I'm much more concerned about Catholicism if we remove politics from the equation. Because, for example, the Catholic Church is anti-abortion, but very recently, like a week ago, they forced two women to have an abortion, which is like ironic. I think if the Catholic Church one day is like, all right, we're going to revive slavery, you're going to see a pro-slavery movement, because they have this inherent hierarchy where you're supposed to follow the Pope. In Islam, if someone says, well, here's what the scripture says, everything is up to interpretation. This is the fundamental problem with religion in general, which is that everything is up to interpretation, regardless of which religion. And this is why throughout history, I'm not talking about like 1,000 years ago or 1,200 years ago, where like the religious texts were still, being written and there was like influence and whatnot. I'm talking about even today, even like the last 500 years, you're going to see that no, the way Islam is interpreted is different. I'm sure if you go back 50 years ago, you can look at black and white pictures of Muslim societies and how common the hijab is, and it's actually very uncommon. I believe you probably saw that picture, a picture of female students in Al-Azhar. Virtually none of them is wearing the hijab. It's the interpretation of the text that changed rather than the text itself. And I think that's what really matters, what people believe, not what Muhammad did. And yes, what people believe does have its issues. I'm not saying it's not. But
We'll just have to agree to disagree on that, because I think it's with the preservation of the snapshot of what Islam is right now, and the way that the whole shtick is, it's unchanged, it's unchangeable, the interpretation is clear, all that kind of stuff. It's very hard.
I don't agree that the interpretation is clear. Muslims openly disagree with one another, even in Egypt, where freedom of speech and trade.
There are a lot of things that are just very clear. There are a lot of things that are very clear, and I think that's the problem here. And so we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. That I don't think Islam is going to evolve that much. I think that the avenue to progress is not just democracy, but also the religion itself being reduced in practice. I don't think that it's going to evolve the way that Christianity has.
I do imagine if you have more thinkers that are capable of speaking outly, that you will see a similar evolution as with Christianity, despite the lack of an equivalent of the Christian church, which I think Muslims would have an advantage in that scenario.
I think we just have to agree to disagree on that.
So do you think like Christianity is more liberal inherently? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't.
Or that there's more room to interpret things differently?
Yes, I think like Christianity, if Christianity existed today and its shtick was it was just our book is preserved and the words are very clear and like this and that, then I would think that they're in the same boat. But because of the way that Christianity evolved before internet, before globalization, I feel like there's a lot more room there, and it's a lot more mild.
I would say if we're talking about like, depends on denomination. If you're talking about non-denominational Christians, you might have a point. If we're talking about like church-based Christianity, Orthodox and Catholicism, hard disagree. You're not allowed to disagree with the Pope, like straight up.
I'm not saying like how tolerant they are of believers. I'm saying
I mean like having a different opinion. Like the Pope is right. He's supposed to be the one with the right interpretation of the Word of God. We're supposed to follow the Pope. It's like it's almost like a pledge system.
But that's never going to take off again. Islam is more decentralized than that. And
yes, it is more decentralized.
Yeah. What I'm saying is you have one Quran, or at least that's what Muslims believe today, right?
Yeah,
that's not going to change. And some of the verses are very clear. And like, how clear these verses are in Arabic. That's never going to change. And it's too late for change to happen because it's preserved now. That's the problem. And it's their selling point. That's the whole selling point of Islam. It's preserved. It's this, it's that. Like this, the rigidness of it is the selling point that they use against Christianity. They look at how divided Christianity is, how mutated it is. Yeah.
In Egypt, we saw a lot of like reformist talking points during the era where we had a democracy, during the 1 year. And I think like that happened with Christianity. Like the church was questioned during Ibn Rushd, even though that was their whole shtick. The interpretation of Islam, just like it has been questioned in the past by people like Ibn Rushd, it can be questioned today by people like Islam Bahari, and it can definitely continue to be questioned once we have that venue to question it. Again, the entire shtick, if you read a Tabari, if you open any interpretation book, you're going to find a whole lot of different interpretations in one verse. And there's a lot of new interpretations that keep popping up. I remember one person, like in the last stream, someone before I joined the stream mentioned how the verses that used to justify homophobia, that gay people are wrong, can actually be about rape. It's because the people raped the people that visited Lut, and not so much about I know this is like a rare interpretation nowadays in among contemporary scholars,
and will
but yes,
continue to be. Like that's my
it
opinion.
will continue to be for a while until it is questioned, until it is put under scrutiny. And that's what we don't have today. We have very little scrutiny. I agree with you that Muslims should dish out more scrutiny.
I don't think there's room for that in Islam, and I don't think there ever will be. But I'm not standing against it. I'm just predicting that it's not going to happen.
So what do you mean there wouldn't be room against it? Like if there's no Wahhabist
there will
government,
there will never be a tafsir book, that's used to the same, like has the same pedigree as a Tabari or Qurtubi that says, oh, being gay is fine. That's never going to happen. Ever. Like these books have been codified.
A tafsir book isn't specifically what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more like...
But that is what I'm talking about. Like these tafsir books, they're preserved now. Like it's 700 years ago, 1,000 years ago, maybe there could have been a new tafsir book, but now it's done. Like how can you implement it mainstream? I mean, how can you implement it mainstream? Well, but that's never going to take off. That's what I'm saying. Like the age for it to take off is done. That's my opinion.
Miracleists are dumb, but yeah, their tafsirs do come out.
No, not dumb. I'm saying done. Like it's over.
Yeah,
like
it's done.
The age of something being mainstream is, but oh well. Anyway, we can agree to disagree.
I think like it happened 200 years ago. I think it can happen today if
there wasn't the internet and globalization like that to that extent 200 years ago. That's the difference.
No, there was Wahhabism. Sorry, there was globalization.
And the internet.
So I think what you mean is that the version of Islam that is present today, because of the internet, is globalized, and that's like how it is. Is that basically your argument?
I think that it's going to be very difficult to introduce new texts and make them as canon, as the previous tafsirs. And because of the internet, because of globalization, I think that's going to preserve the state of Islam to some extent or another. I don't think it can change to that extent as much as Christianity has changed. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the internet definitely is a complicating variable, but I don't think there's a way to confirm or deny this hypothesis other than
time.
Create the conditions and let it be with time. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
we need the conditions first, though, and I think that's the big problem. We don't have the conditions. I think that's the big problem in the Islamic world today. The conditions for liberal values to perpetuate, and again, the Islamic world.
Which is why I think it's more effective to nip it in the bud, remove the religious factor rather than try to create the conditions and hope that religion mutates into something, less with less fangs.
I would say both approaches are valuable. I would say criticizing the religion itself, criticizing the things that the Prophet have said and done, for example, is valuable. And at the same time, political efforts to democratize the nations and get rid of the authoritarian regimes that we have, including secular ones, by the way. I do believe that secular regimes do also perpetuate these habits by merit of jailing thinkers. Then, yeah, I would say both approaches are very valuable. And I think we should do both. I don't think it's one or the other.
Yeah.
And I think once we have both of these, I think that's when we will start to see progress.
Well, I hope we see progress. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. All right. I think that's it. I just made the clarification I wanted to make. I don't disagree, by the way. Let me just make it clear. Before I cut off, it sounded like I'm disagreeing with Aladdin. I'm not disagreeing. Yes, there are certain issues with Islamic Muslim communities. I don't think there's anything Islamophobic or bigoted about calling them out. I think it's actually very important to call them out.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right. Well, I appreciate your contribution as always, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Take care. All right. Thank you all for joining the first episode of, I guess, what was it called? The Aladdin Show. It feels very weird calling it the Aladdin Show, by the way. Like it feels very self-centered, but what else can I call it that makes people understand who this is, who's hosting this? So anyway, welcome to the Aladdin Show, the first episode. It's just going to be taking calls from different people, and maybe we'll add a certain theme to it every now and then. My cat is still there, always there. Before you leave, please hit that like button. Let me know what timestamps stood out to you the most, and we'll, for people watching in the future. Don't forget, there's going to be a stream every Wednesday, hopefully. Just check on Tuesdays, make sure that there's going to be a stream the next day because the timing will change. And yeah, I hope you all take care. Have a great rest of your day or evening or morning. And as always, think critically and think for yourself.